What is up, everybody? Thursday night. Great show planned for you guys tonight. Very, very nice to see everybody here. Now, you guys might be able to hear me, but I'm going to go ahead and just slowly... This is what's great about behind the scenes. Let me see. Guys, can you hear me now? I was wondering if... this is what's great. I was going to say, when we have something like this behind the scenes, what's phenomenal about this is you like to see some of the bloopers. There's some of the bloopers right there. I actually did move everybody into the CrossFire booth. That's because I was still waiting for a couple of the panel members, and they will be joining us, hopefully, around 7:30. So let me know if the audio is okay, guys. We want to start everything. Hey, listen, sometimes it's nice to start things off, different tempo. Different tempo. Always great. Let me tell you something. I'm excited because we got a chance to see Ghost of Yotei. Great state of play. I saw a lot of positive feedback. Saw a couple of things that people were saying that were surprising, and a couple of people on the panel have some interesting comments that I think you guys are going to love to hear. Please take a second, by the way, to hit that like button. Hit that subscribe button so your name come up in lights. Shout out to TLOU Man, see him out there. Mega Cloud. I see Rob Jones, Gamer Boy, Jackknife. A lot of people here. Bender, great to see all of you guys here. Please let everybody know that we are live here in New York. We're going to go through a quick panel introduction because I believe Nib's going to be joining us soon. Hopefully. You never know. It's 12 o'clock a.m. over in England. So he may be taking a nap. We're not sure. The Great Wolf, who's going to be joining us in a bit, he's coming around 7:30, about a half an hour from now. And then we may have a couple other surprise guests popping in. We'll see what happens. But that being said, please look at that outstanding description right there. Right above that is the join button. That's how you get your name in green in the chat, and that's how you become part of the Mooch Maniac family members. We really appreciate it here on the channel. It does help immensely. As much as those likes, please hit that like button. Let YouTube know that you love it. Love it. It's great. And just as I said that, the great Nib has joined us. But I will say this. Let me start in a certain order here. I'll start with Nib. Nib, I'm not sure if you were out grabbing a macchiato or a frappuccino for today's late evening chat of games. How you doing, buddy? Great to have you here.
Yeah, good. No, I was playing Death Stranding 2, then I quickly jumped onto Ghost of Yotei, watched the state of play, did a quick little edit for Twitter, and then I just jumped straight on.
You have like 4 jobs, Nib. One time we're going to do a CrossFire like on a separate day, and we're just going to say what Nib does. We're not sure, but it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things.
Yeah, it's a lot of things. I'm kicking myself though because anyway, whatever. I don't want to get into it. the markets rallied today, like crypto, like Bitcoin is like an all-time high.
I saw that.
Yeah, crazy. It jumped to 117, I think, at one point, and like I had a feeling it might, just based on probabilities. But anyway, whatever. Let's not get into it. Let's talk about games.
Listen, if anybody doesn't want to just send a regular super chat tonight, we will be accepting a what is it there? It's not the crypto, but what is it there? It's the Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, Bitcoin.
Bitcoin is up to 117,000. So if you want to donate 10 of those, that would be lovely to Mooch. Thank you so much in advance, everybody. I'm sure we have a great person out in the audience that has hundreds of those that we'd just like to give a few out to the Mooch. Nonetheless, Nib, great to have you here. Speaking of that, great to have the great Wooly Gamer here as well. Wooly, I reached out to you earlier. I said, can you make the show? You said, listen, I got work. I'm going to try and make this happen, but I'm not really sure it's going to happen. And then he says to me about an hour and a half ago, 2 hours ago, he goes, Mooch, if you have me, I'll be there. I said, buddy, you got to be here. We need you here. So, Willie, great to have you, buddy. How you doing tonight?
Yeah, I'm good. Thanks for having me. I got some exciting news with Ghost of Yotei. It's looking phenomenal. I'm seeing a little bit of discourse about it.
Yes.
Not being different enough from the first game, but I'm like, hello, it's set in, it's still set in feudal Japan. It's like 300 years after the first game. There's not going to be skyscrapers, and cars. I'm not sure what you're expecting.
Do you guys find this with PlayStation titles specifically? I find there's this kind of expectation that they're going to wildly differ, even though it's a sequel. But you can get a new Mario Kart or a new Gears or a new Halo or whatever, and they're all iterative, right? Every sequel is pretty much iterative. But then, this, they're like, why is it so similar? Even though they
don't use a sword, and it's like, for goodness sake, of course you do. We knew it was set. We knew what era it was set. What were you expecting? Dragons? My goodness.
Yeah, they're like,
I've
like, oh, where's Harry Potter's wand? Like, come on, what's going on? This is devoid of creativity. We need surfboards and.
It is
weights.
interesting.
Yeah.
And honestly, guys, we've got to talk about that because that's going to be something in a second. But my panel is fantastic at ripping through at least 3 of the topics, which I'm glad they do because I only get to 1 usually. So I want to say thanks to them for that. First of all, shout out to Garuda Legends. The super chat's working. It's a miracle, folks. He says, I am so hype for Hades 2 full release. That makes 2 of us, buddy. Makes 2 of us. I'm very excited as well for that. Shout out to the great Death Singer. Death Singer, we missed you last week. I had people sending phenomenal messages. Where's the great Death Singer? Where is he? We need him here for tonight's show. But listen, sometimes life gets in the way, and that's not your fault. But I got to tell you, I'm excited that you're here tonight. And of course, in the great Death Singer fashion, you had a tweet that's already going around the world. Death Singer, how you doing tonight?
You know how it is. It's been an exciting week. Anime Expo just went on. They announced 2026 is giga stacked, so I'm happy about that.
I see.
And the current season's just started, and alluding to the tweet, I didn't know Ghost of Yotei was releasing on the PS4.
Oh.
And that's what I'll leave it at for now.
Oh, God. All right, everybody, listen. Ghost of Yotei conversation will be subject number 2, and Death Singer's got the internet already on fire. I'm sure the panel in the chat is right now about to go crazy.
It's not released on PS4.
Well, don't get Willie started already.
Be on the PS4. It looks like it should be on the PS4.
Oh, my God.
Mate, get your disingenuous ass out of here.
It looks much better than Ghost of Tsushima. Keep it 100. Keep it a stack.
You're just without taste. You have no class.
Anyway, we'll get on.
We'll get on to it. We will get on to it. Death Singer loves to start fires, and then he runs away with all the fire extinguishers. So the great Death Singer is back, everybody. I know you guys are excited. I know I am. The great David Faulkner is with us, and there was a lot of great talk that was going on, by the way, over the course of the past 3-4 days about the whole Game Pass debate. And when we were talking about profitability and how we look at revenue and how things are looked at in P&L statements, I said, I've got to have the gaming community's accountant back on the show. The great David Faulkner is back with us. David, I would say, how was your evening? But you are getting very close to lunch. It's about 11. I think it's 11 a.m. over there and down under, but I'm not sure. Buddy, how you doing?
Yeah, doing well. Not far off. It's 9:15 in the morning, so just finishing coffee number 5. Been at it for a little bit, but yeah, Friday looks amazing. Beautiful sunny day. Grass is somewhat green. It's not too cold. Yeah, I'm looking at a nice weekend ahead too. So, yeah, no, doing well. The dollar sign went up on the bat signal, and you reached out, and here I am.
Well, I appreciate that, David. I really, really do. And listen, while you're already into Friday, if you could just send me the winning lotto numbers for New York, that would be fine. I really appreciate it. Speaking of really appreciating things, shout out to Ghost in the Garage. You guys remember Ghost? He was on 2 weeks ago. Ghost, I hope you're enjoying your vacation. He's out there over in Europe doing his thing, sending some great pictures, by the way, over the 4th of July holiday. Ghost, let me know when you're going to get back on the show. I was going to actually write you for this week, but I know you're overseas. Let's get you back on in the next week or two. It was great to have you on and your business look into the gaming world as well. And thank you so much. That is a outstanding super chat. I'm not used to seeing red, but I love red. Love red. If I haven't said it, I love red. Ghost in the Garage, buddy. I really appreciate that. Thank you for that super chat. I hope you're enjoying the vacation with the family. And by the way, happy birthday to both the missus and your young one. I appreciate you being here. Babor Country, everybody. This show can finally start. He says, Singer Yotei 2028, stranding better than every 50-90. Babor coming in hot, and he's not happy with that Singer, but we know. We know.
If you're comparing a 50-90 to your console, you are setting yourself up for the fattest L in your life. So dial back the super chat and hold it, because we're talking native 4K, 60 plus, more than that FPS, which is something that the console wish it could ever achieve. So let's dial it back, my guy.
Well, listen, Death Singer, I hope you have your boxing gloves on, because the chat is going to come after you tonight. But I know you're ready for it, Death Singer. That's why you're here. And speaking of being ready for CrossFire, there's pretty much nobody in the business that's ready for it more than the great Crap Gamer, guys. I reached out to Crap, said, Crap, I hope you can make it tonight. He goes, Mooch, don't worry about it. I'll be there tonight. And I said, well, then it's going to be a fantastic show. The great Crap Gamer is back on the show. Crap, Great to have you, buddy. How you doing tonight?
I'm doing good, man. How everything's going good with you, man?
Yes, sir.
It's been, pretty good week. Not as crazy as last week, though. But
True.
still interesting enough to, have some good conversation. I'm sure.
Absolutely. Well, when you have Deathsinger throwing those jabs left and right, crap, sometimes the show just kind of it becomes a show in itself.
Yeah, the insecurity is ripe with that one. So it's like crazy.
Don't get him started. Don't get him started so early.
No, it's true. I mean, who's more insecure than PC gamers, right?
Right.
Because they're like vegans, right? How do you know someone's a vegan? Because they'll fucking tell you.
They do tell you.
PC gamer, right? PC gamer. I'm game on PC. Yeah. I mean, okay, go fuck yourself. I don't care.
Well, there you go.
I mean, seriously, dude. Hey, you're a vegan. Cool. Good for you, man.
Yeah, but then again, console gamers have to stop talking about. Oh, we finally got ray tracing. Look,
just talking about the game, dude. That ray tracing stuff was the most overhyped nonsense ever. Right?
I am so glad.
Listen, the game that I played the most last year, you couldn't even touch on a PC, which was college football. I put 250 hours into it. I'm so glad
you think ray tracing.
You couldn't even touch it. Even stuff like GTA 6, you can't touch it on PC. Wait years? Come on, get out of here.
We'll wait 1 year.
Your store is down completely right now.
Crap! You know what's funny? Someone said that.
No, it's not. It's up right now. I don't know why you're smoking.
Get out of here, dude! Come on, man.
It's up right now.
Nobody's going around going, "Hey, I'm a console." It's like we talk about games and shit and have fun and shoot the breeze, but dude, it's like the PC dudes take everything so serious. But they won't talk about shit like, "Oh, hey, we hack everything to death and ruin the experience for everybody." Right? They had to take Call of Duty World War II offline because people are hacking into people's PC. Like, what kind of shit is that?
This is the crossfire I was waiting for.
But then again, that is a Microsoft problem because they uploaded an old build.
That's their problem. If there are a bunch of speakers,
problem. They put up an old build.
It doesn't matter. Who messes with that kind of shit? Like, what kind of mentality do you have to go, okay, well, let me go try to fuck with somebody's computer while they're playing a game, or hey, I got to cheat to win at this. Like, it's stupid. The whole mentality is dumb.
That is a small portion. That is a very small portion. Bear in mind, there's vastly more PC players than console players combined. You could put Nintendo, Xbox, and PlayStation together, and they still wouldn't amount to the amount of people playing on PC.
Really? How many are on PC?
Well, let's see.
Not with high-end rigs, Steph Singer. No, not even close.
No. But we're talking about the amount of game. We're talking about the amount of gamers. We're not talking about the rigs.
How many?
Congratulations, more people play mobile phones.
I'd love to hear it.
Well, I mean, Steam has 132 million.
Okay, well, wasn't there 155 million Switches sold, and they already sold another 5 million? Didn't Sony say? Sony has sold, 80 million PS5s, but they say that finally overtook the PS4, so there's still 70, 75 million playing PS4s regularly. What's that, 80 plus 70 million? That seems like a lot more than what's on Steam. Even with Xbox, you're counting Xbox One, they said they had the most players they've ever had, just as recently as last year. So there could be 30, 35 million Xbox Ones, 30 million Xbox Series X. That's 65, 70 million there, too. Mm-hmm. So I disagree with you 100%.
Well, and not to mention, just adding to that point,
But hang on,
why do you think more games sell on average on PlayStation and PC?
Like, if you two would shut up and understand PC isn't just Steam, right? So let's take League of Legends.
I get it, but that's the biggest
players.
Okay, but that's still, you don't think the people that play that are playing Steam too? But those are all people playing the same thing, though, right? It's like those people are unified users. There's no kind of list. It's usually what I'm talking about is different platforms altogether. Right?
I'm getting 2017 flashbacks at CrossFire. This is fantastic. Listen, guys, that's your
PC is not a unified platform.
I know it's not.
I just want to know why. If the PC demographic is so abnormally large, the mobile phone gaming demographic is huge as well, and it's like there's no real point to saying that, Deathsinger, because the vast majority of games sell at a 50-40 ratio in favor of PlayStation to PC. Only occasionally does a game sell more on PC than on PlayStation. With the
RTSs
with most high-profile games, more copies sell. It's roughly on average between 45 and 55% in favor of PlayStation up to 60% PlayStation in favor. So it's like, well, if your demographic is so large, then what point are you trying to make? What does that benefit the industry? Does that do games sell more on PC than PlayStation? It's like you're talking to the core gaming demographic audience here. Like, core gamers appreciate games, and the lower access to entry, the lower barrier to entry that is with console gaming, allows for gamers to play an experience that it might not be native 4K, but it's like, well, upscale 4K techniques look as good as native. So it's like all of these buzzwords that you use just to flaunt a power that you spent thousands of pounds getting through your hardware for relatively superficial differences is kind of like it just feels a little disingenuous, because it's like when you see a game like Death Stranding 2 and it's absolutely flipping gorgeous, or Ghost of Yotei and it's absolutely flipping stunning, but you're there flipping gawping at indie games because it's 4K with ray tracing, and it's like
the thing I was going to say on this is like, because I'm just going to your games that you love, Dessinger, right? Like Metaphor, Refantasio. I'm not joking. Like you quote Digital Foundry, right? They said it has PlayStation 3 level rendering and shadows and lighting. PlayStation 3 level. I didn't hear anyone complaining about that. And then you look at stuff like, Baldur's Gate or Counter-Strike or whatever. Like, these are not tech and boundary pushing games. So,
well, they're not supposed to be. I don't know what.
I mean, what is
neither is Ghost of Yotei.
Yeah, like
it's not pushing tech. It's not pushing ray tracing. It's not trying to. It's not trying to be Alan Wake. It's all about art direction. It's all about art direction. And there you are. Shitting on it. There you are shitting on it, calling it a last gen title. Like,
I ain't shitting on it. I'm just saying the visual.
The thing is the other funny thing is you've got these guys talking up their rigs, and you look at the top games on there. It's Dota 2. Oh, I bet the ray tracing solid on that. Hey, Counter-Strike 2, guys. Hey, PUBG, right? I'm sure that really helps the jank, right? I mean, hey, the game, but Banana, that's number 8 right now on Steam, guys. What about Bongo Cat? That's number 9. Like, holy shit, these PC guys know how to live. What the fuck was I thinking?
That's the funny thing, because like even Ghost of Yotei, right? I do actually think it is a jump over the PS4, because I would say just off the bat, I actually think it's improved as well since the last showing. But I reckon off the bat, I reckon lighting, global illumination, the whatever approximation they're using is more accurate now. You can see in some of the like bounce lighting and some of the whatever, but more so I would say is the density of the environments and draw distance. It's much fuller now, and whereas before you had like in even though it had great draw distance, out in the distance it got quite sparse, and there wasn't as much foliage, and it didn't have self-shadowing and things like that. Now it's like stacked. It's like fully
then again, I play Ghosts on PC fully stacked, so like when I look at Yotei, I'm looking
that's a misnomer, because the thing is, it doesn't matter. You could be running Ghost of Tsushima on PC at the maximum settings. It's not going to come close to the geometric density and foliage density of Ghost of Yotei. This is something that PC gamers don't get. Even if you run like Horizon Zero Dawn at the max settings, I'm not talking about the remaster or whatever, it's not going to compare with Horizon Forbidden West. That's not how it works. The settings make
it doesn't magically create more polygons.
Exactly. Oh, no, it doesn't grant it all of that. What I'm saying is it's super gorgeous when I look at Ghost of Tsushima. And then when I look at Yotei, I was like, okay, I see you've made some improvements, but it's not a drastic jump from one to the other. Like when I look at Ghost of Tsushima and then I look at that, I'm like,
well, Densinger, let me ask you a question though. This isn't one of the topics, but I mean, just to ask you a question, Densinger, what was the card you had before your 5070?
3080.
A 3080. Now, the 3080, I understand there's going to be some improvements. There's definitely, and I'm asking the question. I'm not saying I know it.
It's a massive amount of improvements. It's night and day difference.
It's night and day difference. You're thinking your sweet spot is 1440p, Right?
Oh, at 1440p, I can do path tracing on Cyberpunk, 60 plus FPS.
You could not do that with your. You could not get 60 plus
Nope.
FPS. You could not hit 1440p 60 frames with a 3080.
Nope.
Okay, well that's fine. That's what I'm asking. I'm asking those questions. I mean, those are significant jumps for you. That's fine. I mean, but you do have to understand the one thing that I constantly, and I'm asking the question, is that a lot of people, the things that a lot of PC gamers say, this is why you need to upgrade. A lot of people will turn around. I'm saying a lot of people, not people on the panel, not people in the chat. Those are things that they're not necessarily jumping for. I mean, a lot of people are still playing, like Crap was saying, those numbers on, there's still a lot of people on PS4, there's still people playing on Xbox One. There's still people playing on the original Switch that are playing Fortnite. They're still playing. They don't care about that. And then when you see games like Counter-Strike and other games that are doing well on PC, they're not the most demanding games. So at the end of the day, you know, a lot of the times this is the communication through the community, and that's fine. It's great for the community that we all belong to in the gaming world on X and on YouTube. But that's not necessarily the masses. That's not what the masses are necessarily feeling. Some are definitely feeling the way you do. I just feel like that's the misconception sometimes when it comes to console and PC discussion.
The thing is, it's like I'm out the hardcore right on PC, but the reason why, like League of Legends, if all these games, they're all free to play, right? They're all these big multiplayer games, perennial titles that have been around for 10 plus years, like. And they go from strength to strength. They never die down. They just gain more players. So it's like, of course, these are going to be like the most popular titles on console are going to be your multiplayer, your Call of Duty, your Fortnite, your whatever. It's the same thing on PC. The most popular things will be these free-to-play multiplayer games, and that's what it's going to be because that's what the casuals.
Don't get me wrong. Don't start being selectively intellectually honest when it comes to in favor of PC, but be intellectually dishonest when it comes to console. Because we've established years now that the graphics have plateaued. And you're not going to see, like, you compare, I don't know, like, you compare Dying Light the Beast coming out with Dying Light 2. There is a relatively small upgrade in visuals. And it's like, you're not, we've established a graphic. You can't. The art direction of Yotei, there's slight differences there to the art direction of Tsushima, with slightly more technical polish as well. But it's the art direction, you know, and it feels like you're not factoring that in when you.
Well, Sucker Punch as well. Like Sucker Punch is not Naughty Dog and it's not Guerrilla Games. They've never been that studio.
I know.
So, like,
I know.
Yeah, like that. I don't know.
Different.
I was going to say, but you know, you mentioned Fortnite, right? It's interesting you mentioned Fortnite because I will not take away from the fact that games like Dota, League of Legends, they do massive numbers, right, on PC, predominantly in Asia, but you know, in China and stuff. But either way, they're massive revenue earners. But you know, you mentioned Fortnite on PlayStation. Well, we actually have splits for Fortnite thanks to the Epic case, right? And from the Epic case, obviously that was 2020 or whatever, so it's out of date today. But the split on PlayStation was 47%, Xbox 27%, Android, Switch, and PC combined was 18%, and iOS was 7%. So Android, Switch, and PC combined was 18, and PlayStation itself was 47. So yes, just as you know, we yes, they're Dota and these games do great on PC. So does CS2, but stuff like Fortnite, Call of Duty, etc. The lion's share of their sales are on PlayStation. In fact, Black Ops 6, 82% of all its sales in the United States were on PlayStation. 82%.
Well, yeah, that's why I said they're the most popular games on console. Because if I was looking at PC, the most popular games are League of Legends and CS:GO. Like nothing comes even remotely in the same ballpark as them.
The only thing I would say to that, it's not just on console. Yeah, because the thing is, Steam provides data to Sakana and GSD, so we also know that Call of Duty is like pretty much every year at the top of the best sellers list. And the lion's share of those sales are on console and PlayStation. So if a Steam game was the best seller for the year, it would chart at the top of
but
you know, like Helldivers 2.
but the thing is, they're free to play.
They're free to
CS:GO's
play.
free.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
League
So
is
that's what I
free.
mean. So
Valorant is free. Dota is
yeah,
free. Like
exactly.
so, of
So
course
what
they
I'm
won't sell anything.
Exactly. Correct. Yeah. But then that's what I'm saying. So Call of Duty, not only does it have a free Warzone version, but then it also has additional revenue stream of the retail version, which PlayStation consumers are predominantly buying, right? So it's like it's not just free to play microtransaction revenue, which like Dota and Call of Duty and Fortnite, all of that has, and FIFA, etc. But in addition to that, there's retail sales. Like FIFA, the reason it charts every year, it doesn't just get microtransactions, it also has lion's share of console retail sales, right?
That's right.
And that's not to be scoffed at. That's over $1 billion every year just on retail sales, right? So what I'm saying is, if PC gaming or whatever, if it was to that degree, a PC game would chart every year in the Sakana and GST rankings, and they basically don't. But except for Helldivers 2, I will give it that. Like I believe the majority of its sales were on PC. They would have tried anyway.
Also, Black Myth Wukong, which vastly dominated PC, but that's because China
Yeah.
is a market.
That's
so
right.
it was a given. The West was never going to stand a chance. And of course, the best option is Steam, because consoles, they're doing something, but they ain't much yet over there. So but
the funny thing with
the thing is, to your point though, when I said the thing is, the most popular games on both console and on PC are these multiplayer games. I didn't make the distinction between paid and free to play, but that's also because PC gamers are different to console gamers in that a lot of them will play League of Legends and CS:GO and these kinds of games which aren't available on console. So console will play FIFA, Call of Duty, etc. more, but that's because people are already invested in the. Bear in mind, League of Legends is like 12 years old now. So CS:GO is this.
Well, let me do this. That we're going down a rabbit hole there, and that conversation. You got the super chat is absolutely on fire with this topic. I will read. By the way, I said shout out and thanks again to Ghost for that phenomenal super chat. I really appreciate it, Ghost. He says, "What's up, Mooch? Panel and chat. Looking forward to this one. Boy, it's going to be a fiery one tonight, Ghost. I got news for you. Shout out to Babora Country. He says, I apologize. Ghost Legends is back again. He says, even a majestic pony like me will get beat up to play Perfect Dark. So shout out to Gerarda. I appreciate it. J Hart, RIC says, imagine waiting for Ghost of Yotei. Couldn't be me. Highlander says, good evening, gentlemen. Good evening. I appreciate that, Highlander. Thank you. Babor says, Singer, show me proof it can do graphics better than Death Stranding. Show me one game today. CPU cost more than the Pro. GPU almost as one size wise. So, I mean, he's saying basically, I think, for what the Pro is giving him, he wouldn't be able to match those types of graphics, those types of effects, that type of gameplay, and to be able to play it before it hits PC, all for that $700 price tag. So, I mean, listen, there's a bunch of people out there, Babor, that are going to hear this, and then they're going to say, you know what, I'll build you a PC, Babor, for $699 and not go $1 over that. So we'll see what happens on YouTube tomorrow. Domino Zero says, 5 years, buddy. Upgrade my room. Ghost hype. Let's go, Domino. Appreciate it. Full Sweat Tryhard says, remember what Phil the Shill said, Death Singer, the console gamer is the, in quote, highest value gamer. Shout out to Full Sweat. Appreciate it. And Mega Cloud says, the minute Death Singer spoke, the crap hit the fan, which is, oh boy, it wasn't ever. We got crap all riled up early. Lord Metroid says, DK Bonanza next week, the real game of the year. Cheers, Lord Metroid, the hugest Nintendo fan I personally know. Maybe second, or tied with Worry War. Shout out to Worry. All right, so let me do this. Let me welcome Wolf to the show. Wolfgang, great to have you on the show for the first time, buddy. You came in during the CrossFire, so I got to be honest with you. Welcome, and what a way to step into the pool the first time. How you doing tonight, Wolf?
Thank you very much for having me. I'm doing good.
Great to have you, buddy. I'm going to go ahead and just, listen, since we already talked about it and everybody kind of brought it up, I had spoke to the great David Faulkner before the show, and we were going to go right into it. Let me just ask you guys. Okay, so Death Singer, we heard your opinion on it. Anybody else? I'll start with you, Wolf. Wolf, let me give you some airtime. Wolf, what do you think about what you saw with Ghost of Yotei? Let's discuss that first, and then we're going to get into the Game Pass stuff, and I know that's the meat and potatoes tonight. Wolf, what did you think of the show today?
I mean, the wolf in the damn trailer that we got. I was hoping we got more, but I get it. They probably want to slow drip that information in the gameplay, but I think the entire game looks great. I'll be the first to tell you right now, I was not on Ghost of Tsushima day one, and I had other games I was playing. I was going through a kidney transplant. I had a whole lot going on, right?
Oh,
yeah.
Are you doing better now, Wolf? You
yeah. No, I'm great. I'm
Okay.
great. This November will be coming up on 3 years. I had a whole lot of kidney stuff going on. Yeah, it was crazy at that time.
I'm glad you're better, Wolf. That's phenomenal news to hear that you got through. That's not an easy thing to get through, by the way.
No, thank you. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
I just beat Ghost of Tsushima last month and platinumed it twice. Great game. I loved it from beginning to end. Seeing this today and all the stuff they changed gameplay wise and all the stuff they added to it, I already pre-ordered it, and after I was done with this game, but I'm sold.
Yeah.
So I thought this was phenomenal. I don't know if there's one thing you guys caught. In the end, there was a little thing like towards the end. They showed her with a bear. If that is one of your allies that you can use down the road, that will be insane.
Well, they alluded to more than just one companion, and they showed the wolf, which they have shown now in a few of their different previews. So we know there's a wolf, but you know what? I'll be honest with you, Wolf. There's a good chance that there are going to be other animals or companions. I'll just say companions. Who knows what the game is going to offer you? I could see that happening. So I don't think you're far-fetched in that thought. One thing, Wolf, that a lot of people I was seeing, I'll ask you. And by the way, Crap, David, Detzinger, Nib, and Willie, please do chime in. But Wolf, I'll start with you. A lot of people were saying with that thing, I saw a few people say that they didn't see enough improvements. Now, the world looks like it's a much, much more vast world. They want you to explore. You're actually rewarded for exploring, and you're rewarded for 3 different. And I watched it quick before the show, before CrossFire, and you're rewarded for choosing different ways after a combat situation where you can interrogate, or you can assassinate, or you can do something else. And there's different ways to keep going back and expanding on the game. It gives you more lore. It gives you more of a game in a different direction, maybe a subplot. And it also can give you more equipment to better your character and strengthening you as you progress through the main story. But Wolf, I saw all of that happening. I thought that we really got back to attention to detail. That's what I put in my tweet on X there, or my post on X, is I said what I saw was a little bit more of a return to the old-fashioned PlayStation, where they emphasized on art, they emphasized on music, they emphasized on the art direction in the world, and they gave multiple options on how to enjoy it. I know that they did this in the second edition, I believe, in the Ghost of Tsushima, where they you could have had the Japanese and then the English subtitles. Now you can do it and vice versa. You can do all different types of ways to enjoy this game. Wolf, I thought that they expanded on a lot of what we would say the how would I put it, the bettering of life, if you will, throughout the game. It's not necessarily that they changed the game. It is a sequel after all. But yeah, did they do enough in your eyes?
How are people missing the combat expansion? First of all, dual-wielding swords, spear, chain and ball, that huge sword. I mean, how are people missing this?
And changing on the fly, and depending on the... Go ahead, David.
So they add that to having the wolf and other, second fighters in there as well, and they didn't expand on that at all. Do we get to control them, or are they just an AI function that works with? Like
that part
is phenomenal.
Yeah.
I have a slight concern, and it's only a small one. I hope that there's different stances for different weapons. My concern is that they've replaced the stances with different weapons. And
that was also a thought of mine, Willie. That's a great point.
Yeah, and if that's the case, then it doesn't technically add more depth. It's a different way of doing the same thing, which is a problem because sometimes I get my game head on, and sometimes I can't stop seeing a game rather than being immersed. And I can cherry pick, and it's not intentional, but.
No, I can understand your concern for that, because the first game, certain stances didn't work against certain enemies. In this game, it's saying you have to use different weapons to take on certain enemies. So I get where you see that. And they do need to expand upon that, because we didn't get a full look at the skill tree and all that. So I get what you're saying.
That's my main concern. But I do. But that said, I mean, if the combat is overhauled in other ways as well as just the different weapons, then I'm all for it. I'm just excited, mate, to get stuck in. It just looks beautiful, and I'm really looking forward to playing it in Japanese mode with English subtitles.
Yeah, that's how I played the first one.
There's something about it, man. Like, I can't tell a word that they're saying, but the story just hits harder. Maybe it's because we read it and we interpret things differently. But I don't know.
I feel like the emotions there better with the Japanese language.
I also, my other concern is that with this more open story style of delivering the story, I do hope that we're not leaning too far into the Assassin's Creed Odyssey, not Odyssey, Assassin's Creed Shadows kind of way of storytelling. Like, I do hope that they keep the story, pacing and delivery not vague and ambiguous, but the plot beats are easy to see. Well, does that make sense?
It does. No, it does. And let me say shout out real quick to Anonymous Boss. I appreciate the gifted sub. Thank you, Anonymous. When you say that, Wooly, the one thing I wanted to kind of bring up to crap. I know that, like, I can't remember. I usually know what's your bag and not your bag. I don't remember if you really got into Ghost of Tsushima, but my question really kind of goes beyond whether or not you like that game in particular, crap. But the one thing that we used to talk about all the time that I know you're a big fan of, and after the years of podcasting with you, I never got nearly into the collectibles like you did, and getting collector's editions and collecting different types of consoles that came out for big games, big first-party franchises and things like that. But crap, 2 questions for you real quick, because I'm interested to know. Did you see enough of a change going from Ghost of Tsushima to Ghost of Yotei? Do you think that they have made that natural progression? And second of all, I know you're a big fan of this. It's one of the things that really has pissed you off. I know we talked about it at MNC for years, even back then. Microsoft kind of stopped doing the collector's consoles back a while ago. They've had a couple things here and there, but nothing that really speaks to the Gears fan or the Forza fan or the Halo fan or any of their dedicated first-party flagships. Crap, they also offered the Ghost of Tsushima collector's edition. You can get the PS5. They have the PS5 Pro plates you can buy. They have controllers for them. This is right out of the old Xbox 360 handbook and moving forward. What'd you think you saw, crap? Were you impressed enough or was it lacking a bit?
I mean, it looks good. Obviously, it's an iteration onto the last thing. I think a lot of people have to realize that they upgraded it on PS5 to begin with, right? So that's probably the one. Even the PS4 version got an upgrade for free on the PS5 version. So, it looked good. I don't think that it was like reinventing the wheel, but we're at that point with diminishing returns anyway on the graphical stuff. Like, I know people hate when I say that, but it's just like, it's true. It's like a lot of this stuff, like I go back and play something and from 15 years ago and it looks great and it holds up well. And it holds up well because, a lot of things, I mean, we're getting things where things are more open world and they can, have more, like grass will twitch better or hair will move better or whatever. But, I think they did the like quality of life improvements with it in terms of like the weapons and the fighting and that kind of stuff. So, yeah, I think from that aspect, they probably have done enough to get, like, if you like the last one, you'd probably like this one as well.
Yeah.
So yeah, and I like the fact that they do like the CEs and they treat it like it's a big deal, because I think that's the main thing. It's
that's
like
right.
when you see companies do stuff like that, it's like they believe in their product, and so that's, I think, the big difference when you see, they're like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna do a special edition console, or we're gonna do plates, and we're gonna do
controllers,
and we're gonna do a CE for the game itself. I remember the last one had like a porcelain mask.
Yeah, I have it behind me.
Big map. Yep. Yeah, I have it too. And it's really cool. So it's nice to see that they still do that and go all out for it, and have that belief in it or whatever. So yeah, I think it looks great. I think it's exactly what it needs to be.
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of said that, crap, because that's one of the things that I know a lot of times we all, like I said, the console wars are always a lot of fun. People say, oh, the console war's over. That's fine if you want to talk about the way that Microsoft is going in that direction, things of that nature. But Sony doing what they're doing here and continuing, listen, things can always change, right? You never say never, don't speak in absolutes. But the thing about it is that Sony's still continuing to go down that path where they do make the console customer feel special. Yes, in a year, 2 years, it goes to PC. We know that. That's nothing new. But at the same time, there is still a valid reason to own. And David, I'm going to David here. David, I know I wanted to start with you with the Game Pass stuff, but David, you did send. I hope I'm scrolling quickly between the chat and also looking at the DMs that you're sending me here with some stats. But speaking of consoles, David, that's kind of what gives the PS5 its legs. Is they are still paying direct attention to the console gamer first, and they will make other monies, if you will, on PC and whatever else they want to explore moving forward. But nonetheless, you can see that they still have exclusives. They're still making dedicated consoles for these top flagpole franchises. David, is that part of one of the charts you had sent? I think that's one of the ones you had just sent to me. It seems that that's how Sony's kind of keeping their leg up on console sales, and that's what they want to have in everybody's home.
Yeah, so it's one question with a million different parts to it.
Sorry about that. That was like, what was it there? Back to school bit there. I appreciate that, Dave.
Yeah. No, it's all good. So yeah, it's the growth, the combined annual growth rates, CAGR, or consolidated annual growth rates. It's small. It's not got the power that it had leading into at the back end of the 2010s, and it's been pointed out, diminishing returns on graphical fidelity, and people. It's difficult to sell something to someone when they can't see it, touch it, feel it, or experience it. So when the graphical fidelity jump is deteriorating every iteration, and the improvements even in the PS5 Pro to the PS5 is more about how they can build the games faster and quicker and better, and using AI technologies to do the upscaling and all the rest of it. That's not a benefit for the end user. That's a benefit for the developers and a benefit for the people who are building and making these things. So it might be that we get games faster, but the output, the player at the end of it is not going to experience massive leap forwards like we did with PS1 to 2, 2 to 3, 3 to 4, that sort of thing. So in this era of diminishing returns for the user at the end of it, and it's not cheap stuff to get into, it's a matter of how do they diversify and get more revenue in the door versus maintaining their business model of their core base and sticking to that. So they've got to be fluid, and they've got to transition into different business models. You look at where all the money's coming from, it's not all coming from the US anymore. Their chunk of it's coming from China and Asia. There's the growth in PC in those areas is far outstripping the growth in consoles. And that's in terms of revenue generation. But then, you look at PlayStation in particular, they've sold 70-something million PS5s. They've still got nearly 50%, just short of 50% of their revenues generated, or their time spent in generating that revenue is coming from the PS4 base. So they haven't shifted 40 to 60 million PS4 owners, which is an issue for them. They've got to find a way of shifting them, or they've got to get the revenue out of them somewhere else. So if they're then looking at China and how things work in that as a developing market, India is a developing market. That's why they've got the China Hero and India Hero projects in there to try and leverage into those markets.
Yes.
That's where they're going to break in, because in the US and particularly in Europe now, it's limited. They've sort of hit saturation point, and it's barely even replacing newcomers, of replacing those that are exiting.
True.
There's the shift in the graph is that the gamers are getting older, and they're not bringing in the bottom end as much as they did 10, 15 years ago. So you got to expand your markets. That's why they've got the PC push. If they can get money out of those developing markets and then try to find a way to transition them into the console space, that's why they don't just slam all the games into PC. They can transition them into the console space, and they've got a point there for generating that next step. But these things don't happen in a matter of weeks. These things take years. You've got to condition a consumer base at a certain rate, because people hate change, and then you've got to deal with regulatory changes and social changes and economic factors and all the rest of that stuff. But if the charts that I was sending through, for what is it, 2024, 49% of the total gaming revenue came from mobile. Nearly 50% of that's related to advertising. And you've got 28% is in, I'm just going from memory there. Is it 28% was in console?
Console,
and 23%
yep.
was from PC.
Yeah, exactly.
But that's not splitting it as solely console and solely PC uniqueness. That's some console players will have revenue generation in the PC space and vice versa. So it blends itself, and there's potentially people that are across all of it. So in looking at it as a holistic perspective from that, there's always going to be this, or how much is this, how much is that? It's that in the unique circumstances, and it to be blunt, it doesn't really matter. It comes down to where are you as an organization? It's the same. PlayStation, Nintendo, Steam, Xbox have all got the same question that they need to figure out. How do we engage people to give us money? And I say it all the time. These companies are trying to figure out how can they reach into your pocket, give your leg a nice little warm rub, and then pull you as much money out of your pocket as possible, and make you feel good in the process of doing it. And it's always going to be a challenge of, how are we doing that? With the Ghost, to link all that back to the Ghost of Yotei conversation we were having just before. PlayStation's done their show. They've then uploaded the in 4K because they don't stream it in 4K. They've uploaded the 4K version, and I'm still trying to confirm it, but I'm reading that was on a base PS5. It's not on a PS5 Pro that they've shown it. So
Wow.
if
Good
there's
point.
a PS5 Pro version and PSSR, FSR4, whatever they call it, PSSR 2.0 in sometime next year pops out, and it can then improve it, further and get it up to 4K 120 or whatever it is they've done. Is it actually going to have as bigger improvement from what we just saw to that? It's going to have to be something pretty decent, but then it's reliant on what TVs people got in their house. And that will be the limiting factor. And like I've got a 4K 60 FPS TV in the main living room that's got my original PS5 hooked up to that. I don't have any reason to go and spend $2,500 getting an 8K or 3,500 Australian getting an 8K TV that can do 144 or 168 or whatever it is. Because that means I've spent that much. This ties into the other conversation around PC game. I've got to spend that much to get the TV, and as a special buy. Now I'm going to go and look at, I could probably get it on a PC for cheaper. But if the TV already needs to be upgraded because it's not working properly anymore, the next one I get will be in that consideration because it's not just for the gaming, it's the TV for the whole house. And these are those, these are the things that play into the decisions about where are we putting it, what are we doing with it, how much are we going to invest in getting it up to spec, and what's our consumer base. 80% of people who game on console have a TV that does 4K 60 FPS. Because that's the standard that's effectively being built across most TVs that are in the value range. If you've got less than 20% of your entire console base, and that's not just PlayStation, that's all consoles. You got less than 20% of your entire console base is sitting there with a TV that can do 4K 120, then you're not really playing to your strengths if you make the game only able to do 4K 120 natively, because you will spend a lot of money to go nowhere, and then you'll be downscaling. So, sorry for the TED talk on the business piece, but that's the reality of what they're working with. If they've made something that's scalable, great, but that costs money. If they've taken, as was said before, they've taken the PS5 version of Ghost of Tsushima, remodeled, reused as much of that as possible, that's great. And it's an iteration for a slight step forward. That's saved them a heap of time and money. That's a sensible business decision. They haven't had to build the thing from the ground up again. And again, that's challenges of why games get cancelled because they cost a fortune and they go nowhere, but different conversation, different time. That's part of the challenge that they've got. Does it look great? Yeah, it does look great. Is the combat going to be interesting? It certainly looks interesting. Is it going to be on PC day one? Probably not. But it's certainly enough there to warrant.
David, I'm glad.
Warrant some people to upgrade from the PS4 to the PS5, and that's a good thing for PlayStation. But that's why it's PS5 only.
And it's funny you say that because the correlation I'll make there, and I'm not saying it's one for one, but it's interesting because a lot of people are saying, "Oh my God, it looks like the first one," and we just went through what you were saying, David, as far as upgrades and what would quantify people making that upgrade. Is it justifiable? The same question could be asked for Grand Theft Auto 6 that's about to come out next year, right? That is going to be Grand Theft Auto. Like, if you guys are thinking that it's going to be something else, it's going to be Grand Theft Auto. It's going to be a larger world, right? More immersive. I of course, it's going to look better. Ghost of Yotei looks better than Ghost of Tsushima. And That's the thing. But like, I think those same questions are going to be. But the difference is, though, there's going to be a spike in console sales next year. They were expecting, when you saw those estimates, those quarterly estimates that they gave, what was it, 2-3 quarters ago, David, they were saying that the estimates were going to be much higher for the end of this year, which I can't remember. I think for Sony is a different quarter than the United States, of course. But nonetheless, my point being is now those have been shifted over to next year's quarterly financials, and they're going to see that explode. So you're going to see an unbelievable large number of consoles, Xbox Series X, PS5, PS5 Pros being purchased for Grand Theft Auto. But it's funny when people say it's just more of the same. I'm like, well, GTA 6 is going to be more GTA. That's kind of one of those things. And that I'm always wondering what the next evolution that some gamers are expecting when they see a sequel come out. And then you see his team go out and try to make a new IP. And Nib, I'll kind of go to you here because I before we move on to Game Pass, I do want to hear your thoughts a little bit more about Ghost of Yotei, because you did put a tweet out just moments ago. But what is it that people really expect in that next evolution of game when it's a sequel? And then when a team does go out and try a new IP, they go, why'd they even try that for? Why'd they even bother with that? They should have just made another Ghost of Tsushima, right? That's what people always say. So, Nib, what do you think? What did you see? What were your thoughts? Did you see enough? I see a few people on X going off on the people that thought it was just another sequel, that they didn't make a large enough splash. What did you think, Nib?
Again, it's a weird thing because I always find this kind of like, I'm almost certain those very same people who are complaining it's not enough go through their post history, go through their Twitter history, go through their social media history. I guarantee they have hyped up games that have been more iterative than this. It's always the way. It's always this double standard I find where when it comes to certain platforms, they want much more of a bold, which is fine, by the way. I have nothing. There's nothing wrong with expecting bolder changes, but all I will say is be consistent with it. If you're not consistent with it, then we can tell it's from a place of fanboyism, whether you want to admit it or not. And I will say also, this is part 2 of a game. This is not part 4 or part 5 or 6 or whatever, where it kind of needs such a massive overhaul. It's literally just a second in this franchise. So
that's outstanding point, Nib. People don't really reference it in that fashion, Nib. I just want to piggyback off what you're saying here. A lot of times I've been saying the crap because I'm always excited. I'm very excited actually for Gears of War E-Day. And I'm hoping that they kind of make the mechanics just they speed. Listen, don't change the essence of Gears. Gears is Gears, but it would be nice if they changed the speed tempo a little bit to catch up to the current day gamer, what we've come to expect in that third person shooter. So my point being with that is, you know what I mean? But E-Day would now be the. What is it? So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You had Judgment, and you had this one. You know what I mean? You're on the 6th version of this coming out. So at that point,
let's remember Infamous. Let's remember Infamous 1 and 2. Infamous 1 and 2. They weren't doing anything outstandingly different from one another.
No. Yeah. Exactly.
I mean, remember both games extremely fondly. So, what are we doing here?
If you want to talk again, I happen to think I'm very consistent in this regard.
Nib will be right back.
Sorry, I find I'm usually consistent on this regard. So maybe Gears 4 and 5 I wanted more of a difference because it's number 4 and 5, right?
Right.
But Gears 2 and 3, I was perfectly fine with them being iterative and loved them. So I actually think based on the state of play, there's more changes than I actually anticipated, funnily enough, because one with the whole new weapons, completely changing up, how you play or whatever. The what looks like you can make your own band or crew or something, like with a group, and then obviously you have the wolf as well. It seems like the actual exploration is even more freeform than it was in the previous one. It's got that kind of Breath of the Wild vibe where it's just if you see something, just go and do it. Before you had that wind guiding you, but it was kind of repetitive-ish, whereas this is even more sort of expansive. I can see from the actual design of the world itself, it's way bigger and broader. And what you notice is like, even, she could be riding her horse or she could be talking to an NPC, but always in the distance you can see a bunch of shit, like quite detailed, like either landmarks or cities or some sort of shrine or mountain in the background. And I guess like the idea is like, again, was similar to Breath of the Wild. Any points of interest you'll be able to see way, way, way off in the background, and it will be something to kind of aspire to go to, which is cool. I think that could be an interesting thing, as long as it doesn't get too repetitive. Visually, yeah, there are some things where I think like it's not such a big jump, especially like up close geometry and stuff. I doesn't look like it's using like photogrammetry or anything like that. But on the plus side, I do think like GI lighting and overall density of the world is much improved. The combat looks really cool. Even little things like the exploration with the horse and the environments. And Ghost of Tsushima already had like an amazing liveliness to it, like with all the billowing grass, and with this seems to have taken it like to the next level where all the foliage is dynamic and moving and stuff. And I don't think like people realize how computationally expensive that stuff is, because like not only is the foreground stuff moving, but literally in the vast distance trees are swaying and they have their own lighting and shadows and stuff. And you can tell that the cutoff has been greatly increased from like the PS4. So stuff in the distance is much more detailed and stuff now, which is again cool. I think when we're actually playing it, this is gonna seem more of a step up than maybe it shows on like YouTube and stuff. Because don't forget, YouTube is highly compressed, and one of the benefits like to PS5 and PS5 Pro is image quality, right? They can usually push slightly higher resolutions, but you're not going to see that in YouTube with the catastrophic compression. So yeah, I think like it looks very appealing. I think it looks bolder and fresher than like Assassin's Creed Shadows. And
Absolutely.
I enjoyed it. So, yeah, I enjoyed Assassin's Creed Shadows for a good 20-30 hours, but then it just became like that repetitive. I actually couldn't finish it.
I thought it was going to be like I was never going to get bored until one day. Literally, it was like a light switch. It was weird.
Yeah.
It was like I booted up and I went,
dude.
Dude,
I literally had the same thing, dude.
It's just so bizarre. It pulled the rug right from under me, and I felt proper disillusioned with it. I was like, man, it was horrible. It was a horrible feeling, bro. I got
I had the same thing, and you know what? I like persevered because at the end of the day, I spent money on it, right? Like it's not like I just played it on a subscription. I'll be honest, if I had played it through a subscription, I probably would have dropped it sooner. But I'm like, oh, do you know what? I put money in it. Let me give it. But I don't know. I had the same thing where it was just like a rock in the sea or something. It just like sunk. And once it lost my interest, it was very hard to. Everything about it became monotonous, and it's interesting because I could compare it to Death Stranding 2, right? Death Stranding 2, the terrain is actually part of the challenge. But here's the funny thing: Death Stranding 2, even though part of the strategy and gameplay is the terrain is far less frustrating in Death Stranding 2 than it is in bloody Assassin's Creed Shadows. Like Assassin's Creed Shadows, just getting from 8.8 to B is such a bloody annoying chore after a while, because just the way you climb and slide around, like not everything's traversable, and like certain things you can't go up, and then half the time you're like in bushes. I don't know if you found this, like half the time I have no visibility. I'm just running, but all I'm seeing is bushes in like right up to the camera, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like other games like have some sort of opacity, or they do something with the visibility so you can still partially see through, whereas this doesn't do that. And I'm like, this is so dopey. Like why, like for long periods of the game, can I literally not see shit? Like Diddley Scott.
Yeah.
And I just like, it's a weird thing. Like it doesn't have that like polish and refinement. Even little things like the mocap and the story and some of the derivative gameplay design. So like again, when I see like Ghost of Tsushima, I can see how it is a far more polished version of basically this, of what Assassin's Creed Shadows is aiming to be. So in that sense, yeah, like Shadows didn't scratch the itch, and I feel like Ghost of Yotei could. I just am nervous that it could also become too repetitive. We'll see.
Yeah,
Mooch,
go ahead,
one thing I
Detsinger.
did want to bring up about it. One
Was that?
pleasant surprise was the Shinichiro Watanabe mode. Now, if you've ever watched Samurai Champloo and other things, you know him. Now, that mode is that's sick because lo-fi beats, and it's got like the score of it, and just chilling in the world. That's just gonna be the mode to play the game in when it eventually comes to PC. Like, I'm gonna be playing it in that mode exclusively, because I just love Samurai Champloo, and I'm so glad they added that, because that will be an underrated feature. A lot of people ain't gonna appreciate it.
It's not enough for you to buy a PlayStation, Deathsinger?
No. One game ain't enough.
I mean, there's two.
I find it interesting you say when, not if.
Well, of course it's coming, because, yeah.
Listen, all games are timed exclusives at this point.
The way PlayStation is moving, this like right now, like that shit's coming within a year.
Oh, I don't know about within a year.
I'm gonna say a year. I'll say a year. Yeah, in 2026, the end of 2026. That's when you'll see.
I don't believe that. No, I do not believe that. I believe it'll release on PS Plus for a short period in a year and a half's time. And then after that short period, and another deep sale, then maybe they'd consider releasing it on PC. You got to appreciate the impact of optics. Like, if they release the game within a year, people would just it could skew the optics. Like, they didn't do it with Horizon Forbidden West. They wouldn't do it. They wouldn't do it with this game, because
what is the quickest a single player game has come from PlayStation to PC?
It was Ratchet and Clank. That was a year. Under a year. Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart. That was
under a year?
I don't think it was under a year.
It was 12 months. It was 12 months.
All right, 12
exactly
months.
12
yeah.
months.
The rest of them are floating right around that 15-month time frame, somewhere between right around that.
I've got to appreciate that was a pilot. That was a pilot for the first studio for Nixus, wasn't it? Was it Nixus?
Yeah, Rift Apart was 13 months.
Yeah.
Oh, well, close enough. But yeah, I mean, at the rate they're going, like, I wouldn't be surprised if you get the announcement next year that it's coming to PC. Like, it's one of these state of plays, because
I feel like some of it might just be technical, because Rift Apart is not as big a game. Obviously, like, it's not open world, it's single player. It's not that long, like, 13 hours or whatever. Maybe that's
a linear game.
Yeah, it's a linear game.
And it was not built around the PS5 hardware.
Well,
that's actually.
Rift Apart was.
Rift Apart was PS5, right?
Yeah. No. I'll clarify what I mean. It was built to a lower baseline, because during production and early development, they didn't even know the PS5 specs. So what they did is they played a safe. Right, we're on like memory speed and bandwidth and all that. And
it was approximated, basically.
Yeah. So they that's why it would run on a Series X hard drive on a Series X.
Part of my excitement, I love listening to my panel. The other part of my excitement for every Thursday night is to listen to Aaron in the chat. Read it, Aaron in the chat. Aaron, you are a gift from the gods. He says Yotei will be on PC in 6 months, and he goes, and it still won't sell. Aaron.
Now, what if it doesn't sell though? That's going to be a problem, right?
The thing is,
good question, Wolf.
So I actually think it was. I think it will sell far better than Death Stranding, because I remember a few weeks ago, Mooch, I was on Crossfire, and I said I think Death Stranding 2 will do good, but it won't do great because it's still quite niche. I don't think that about Ghost of Yotei.
Well, so let me say, Nib, you're a man of numbers, and Wolf, you posed the question. I just Googled it real quick. Ghost of Tsushima has sold over 13 million copies worldwide. This milestone was reached as of September 2024.
Correct. Yeah.
Go ahead. Go ahead, Nib. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but I know you love numbers. Yes.
No, I'm talking about
I don't
PC
think-
specifically.
Oh, PC. I'm sorry. I'm talking. I did. Yes. Okay. Let me see here.
No, I meant in total. Like, I don't think it's going to do like God of War, Spider-Man 2 numbers, but I think it will do a lot better than Death Stranding 2. And even like in terms of the metrics that we have on social media and stuff, the social media sort of exposure for it, or sort of the views and stuff it's getting on trailers and stuff is far exceeds Death Stranding 2 even. I think that the launch trailer, whatever, has like 10 million views or something just on the PlayStation channel. I think Death Stranding's has like 3 million. So, again, I think it's one of those, like, it could do even better than the original game. Because I think like there's an appetite for this type of game. And I think word of mouth will be quite strong from the first game as well, because as far as I understand, a lot of people resonated with the first game, maybe more than critics did. So yeah, it should be interesting to see, like, especially if Shadows, like, maybe didn't hit the mark that in the way that this might. We'll see, but that would be really interesting to compare.
Actually, to your point,
Yeah,
the thing is, PlayStation on PC, Helldivers undoubtedly is their most successful game. But their second most successful, I'm going off peak concurrent players because that's so many, But that's generally the metric you go with. Ghost of Tsushima is their highest outside of Helldivers 2. After that, it's God of War 2018, then Horizon Zero Dawn, then Forbidden
that's
West.
on PC though, but on console, it's easily God of War Ragnarok and Spider-Man 2. In fact, Spider-Man 2, funnily enough, do you know the May Sakana results just dropped?
It's still in there.
Spider-Man 2 is still in the year-to-date chart, like
but
2 years later.
When Wolf brought up, would it sell on PC? I think it'd do fine. I think they will get what they expect to get from it. Because bear in mind, it'll be a year later, right? It'll be a year plus later. So they'll they don't even sell it at full price on PC. Like, Ghost
What
is
does it usually launch at? Like $10
cheaper
cheaper than the console launch price? Isn't that what it usually is?
20 sometimes. 10,
I think
20.
these days it's been the same price, no?
Well, Zero Dawn released at 45, and then Forbidden West released at 50.
Okay, that's not too bad. That's cheaper.
Ghost released at 50.
David, you may have the numbers here. Again, this is as of September 24, so numbers have changed. It says, according to estimates from the analytics service VG Insights, players have purchased Ghost of Tsushima 1.4 million on Steam alone. So 1.4 million. We have 13 million lifetime as of September 2024. That's
more than I thought.
Yeah, I was going to make one other point about Ghost of Tsushima, actually, and I think we forget this when we discuss like expectations around games. Sucker Punch is actually not a very big studio. Last I checked, it was like 120 people. They are not a Naughty Dog or a Insomniac, right? They do not have, or even a Guerrilla Games. I think Guerrilla Games is 400 and something, 460 last I checked. So even expecting like that level of production, I think when I look at Ghost of Yotei, I'm like, it's competing with the big boys, but they're actually a small studio in comparison. So yeah, again, we got to rein that in. Maybe they've increased their size for this game, and I'm sure like the end number that has gone into making it will be high, but it's not going to be anything close to like a Horizon Forbidden West or what's the new Naughty Dog game, Intergalactic. It's not going to be touching that kind of crediting.
I mean, look at Infamous Second Son; it still holds up to this day.
Yeah,
visually,
absolutely.
Yeah, I agree.
So, David, go ahead and report that. I see you put it in our DM here, but go ahead and if you want to report that, please.
So Ratchet and Clank Rift Apart was released in June 2021 and hit PC in July 2023. The shortest one that I've found so far is Spider-Man 2.
Oh, 2 years later, did you say?
Yeah.
That's the one. That's the one. Spider-Man. Yes.
Spider-Man 2 went 1 year, 3 months, and it was because it got leaked. They went early with it.
That's right.
Was the one. It was Spider-Man.
David, how long after did Rift Apart release?
2 years, 1 month.
2 years, 1 month.
I thought Rift Apart was a lot longer,
yeah.
but I know you guys are the numbers guys on that
I
one.
got it wrong. It was the correct.
Yeah, I knew it wasn't.
Yeah,
that
I got it wrong
close.
too.
It was the correct.
Because everyone went rampant on Twitter running this game on a hard drive. Look, it still works.
Well,
Yeah.
2
I
years,
remember
1
that.
month is still a long time, man. That's still a long time.
Yeah, that is a long time.
Spider-Man being a year, and 1 month was the quickest.
1
but,
year,
I mean,
1 year, 3 months.
They
either
were
way,
kind of forced to do that, though.
I love
Also-
it. Your dad saying you're Rift Apart a year, then it's like 2 years. Same thing. 15 months, 12 months, same thing. Good thing you're not an accountant, Death Singer.
Well, actually, no, because I misremembered. I misremembered. It was off the
okay.
top of my head.
I understand,
And actually, to be fair, it was the same studio, just a different game. I mean,
25 months to like 9.
Hey, man. Either way, it's proof of concept. But also,
to reiterate though, again, same studio, different game. The point being made was there that it was a shorter time period than the 18 months that PlayStation had said they will assess them case by case, and it'll likely be 18 months to 2 years. They haven't wavered from that, but what we don't know for certain is what are they bringing, and if it's case by case, and you're seeing with the recent events of their version of case by case can sometimes not be within PlayStation's control anyway, particularly with their second party stuff. Rise of the Ronin and Stellar Blade have done really well on PC. And when I say done well, we're not talking about 5, 10, 15 million copies sold on PC. If they go north of 500,000, that is done really, really well for an older game being released on PC, particularly when PC Steam alone has got, last year was 15,000 new games brought to it. And if you're not in the top 100, you're barely selling 100,000 copies. So there's some metrics that need to be considered in when having that discussion. But if that's their plan and that sells really well on the console, and then they shift it to PC and it sells, like Ghost of Tsushima with just over 1 million, and that's in the space of 18 months after the console release, it leads into a question of what we were talking about before was Gran Turismo 6, Grand Theft Auto 6 coming in May next year, and what that will do in terms of console and PC and all the rest of it. Coinciding with, and remember when we spoke about this ages ago and said they've done a more than 12-month delay of GTA 6, there must be a systematic reason for it. It's not a polishing the graphics, there's a system-based thing.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if FSR 4 is due to release somewhere around March or April next year, and the PlayStation 5 PS5 Pro version is coming then, and AMD's got their lineup of stuff happening around about then as well. There's the reason why, the main reason why they've had that long delay. To capitalize on that, and that's got to be built into the back end of the whole game. So that will take time. But then, what does a PC version of a console developed first game look like when 12 to 18 months later, they've built this thing with the PSSR, FSR 4 in mind?
Mm-hmm.
When they flick it over to PC, have they got to do multiple different builds to differentiate between an AMD and the NVIDIA stuff? And then I suppose it's a sensible question then. Does a timed exclusive, does it play better on one PC set than the other? And how do they, with the divergence of the AI technology there, will it actually be worth doing a PC release for some of these games if they do sell really well on the console? I know PlayStation's going to chase the dollars everywhere it makes sense, but these are some of the quirky conversations that just don't get had.
Just adding to your point, and I did Google the dates that you put in the group chat, by the way, and you're spot on. Ratchet & Clank didn't release till 2 years after PS5 release, so it wasn't exactly a year. Death Singer, like you said.
Yeah, I need to double check it because I just
we got to be careful with Deathsinger on the panel because he says
we do have to be careful. Yeah,
and you have to do your due diligence to make sure he's not capping at his backside.
I thought it was just a month difference, but yeah, a whole year.
Actually, to be fair, I misremembered the type of game, but also we have to bear in mind that there are people on the on the panel as well. You have to do due diligence because they also cap out their ass. So
well, that's just a deflection. But go off.
But
can you give us an example? Wait, Deathsinger, can you give us an example?
Yeah, Forza Horizon 5 on PC isn't an Xbox game. I mean, so something like that.
Oh, there we go. You're gonna get Wooly all upset.
You agreed with me. You agreed with me. What was it you ended up saying about Assassin's Creed Shadows on PC is still an Xbox game? And then I said what? And you was like, sorry, it's a Ubisoft game. Well done. We know who the publisher is, but we weren't talking about publishers. We were talking about the SDK. We were talking about the platform.
You were talking about the skill.
But we won't go there again. We won't go there again.
Yeah, that's a whole show, Wooly.
That was you fighting over semantics for the sake of trying to win an argument instead of being intellectually honest to know that what we were referring to is Xbox console games, which AMG themselves.
It sounds like we're going.
I will just say one more thing. Asus themselves had to come out and say specifically, no, this will not run Xbox games. It will only run PC games.
Wooly, I don't know if you saw a bit of juicy tidbit about this, right? So Moore's Law is dead.
Yeah, I was going to say MLD did this. Yeah,
he had a developer on who he asked them Xbox support, the development side, if there's going to be like a dev kit or any sort of testing kits or methodology for the Asus Xbox ROG Ally, and they said no. I don't know the exact word, but they pretty much said no, just treat it.
Yeah. So when Xbox themselves, as well as Asus, disagree with you, you know you're down bad, Deathsinger. But anyway, what I was going to say before you decided to go all diva and try to hijack with a deflection is I was going to say, just to add to Faulkner's point, is that we have to remember the purpose behind the PC releases. And no, it's not just for a few extra million quid. It's actually primary reason is to incentivize the audience over into their walled garden, basically, to get them to invest in their storefront. And so what they do is they strategically, Herman Hulse said this 4 times now, actually. Fourth. But it's the 4th time he said it. They strategically decide on a case-by-case basis when to release a specific title in order to incentivize and try to pull over gamers from the PC space into buying a console so that they can look forward to the next iteration of that game. It's exactly why the Horizon remaster the Horizon remaster release before Horizon Forbidden West port. It was to get PC gamers excited for the sequel, to get a PS5 to play Horizon Forbidden West. So, yeah, I mean that's also a line of logic that you got to remember. So there is no point to just throwing within a year a tentpole flagship title before it's even reached it, before the sales have significantly stagnated. Because a year, there's still sales, they still sell well even after a year. You wouldn't just release that on PC because the impact of consumer behavior could be a thing. It's too close a year. You're probably looking at a year and a half at least.
Also, something to what Faulkner said, which I have to talk about, is when he said about the difference between DLSS and FSR. All games on PC they all have the options. So when they make the game, they put all the options there. Like if you boot up Ghost of Tsushima on PC, you have the option of XeSS, which is Intel's AI upscaling. You have DLSS, which is NVIDIA's, and then you have FSR, which is AMD's. So they cater to if you're running Intel, AMD, or NVIDIA all in one. So CPU doesn't matter the brand because the CPU doesn't matter like that. So it's just going to be all games generally have the option. So let's say I have an AMD GPU. I could go into the settings and I know FSR is going to be there as an option because I'm not going to click DLSS. So generally, when they release a game, it has all options available because they understand that PC is a very diverse platform.
But you've
Yeah,
got to
I do
build it.
think
Don't you have to
XeS
build it for
doesn't.
that though.
Say again, David?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
don't
they
think
build it for
XeS is supported with every game, as far as I understand. And
Intel is a newer to the game.
newer,
so
yeah.
it'll take
And then
time.
the issue with FSR is obviously FSR 4 is exclusive to the new RDNA 4 GPUs, whereas FSR 2 and 3 are not very good. So it's not ideal, basically. Obviously, on the NVIDIA side, it's different.
In building the game, though, don't you have to factor that in? And that's
Well, yeah.
probably more the point I was getting to, is if they've now got these larger, they're easy options to implement for the consumer. But if you're building this thing and you've got these pathways of these upscaling items, then they're diverging to become, different ways of doing it. All of a sudden, the port to PC becomes, we've got to do this 3 times, not 2 times, or we've got to do it 3 times, not 1 time. And that starts to add cost. And that's where, again, the way that PlayStation analyzes these things in their assessments of their business cases for doing them. Obviously, a higher listed game is a chance of selling more units, then they can invest more into it to get the ROI. But if they're now having these additional costs and doing the AMD version is the baseline version, and then they're getting assistance to go out from there, that's something that needs to be considered. So, and that can take time. Again, it really comes down to, and the reason I brought it up was, it comes down to the cost and time associated with converting these things over, and the time compression of getting them out sooner.
There's also partnerships involved too, though.
Yeah,
yeah.
And you
So,
also have to consider.
I'm sorry, Justin. Because Capcom, for example, they don't support DLSS in any of their Resident Evil games on PC. They have a partnership with AMD to support FSR. If you want DLSS on RE Engine games in the Resident Evil series, you need to mod it to put it in the game. There is no official support there. So there are partnerships that exist too. So that kind of makes things messy on the PC side as well.
But also, to what Faulkner said, it's like generally when a port comes over, they seem to add a lot of things. Like, for example, they'll add like ultra wide support. They'll add new like features that are like for the PC. Like they'll add like different options and whatnot. So like when Ghost came over, like obviously it doesn't have like widescreen support on PlayStation. But when they brought it over, they add some features and give it a bit of glitz and glamour. So I don't know how much it actually costs them.
What did they add, Dessing? Because I'm curious about that. Because with Horizon Forbidden West and Zero Dawn Remake and Death Stranding, they basically didn't add anything pretty much. It was very minor differences in the graphic settings is one of the things Digital Foundry complained about. So I haven't obviously tested Ghost of Tsushima.
They added support for NVIDIA Reflex, NVIDIA DLAA. They added full customizable keyboard controls. They added support for ultra wide. They added unlocked frame rates for the game above 60 FPS.
No, I mean like, but did they offer like, is there different geometry or draw distance or anything like that, or is it just sort of like the standard AI upscaling options?
It's just the standard stuff you would expect, like with the features. So there wasn't extra geometry or anything like that. It's just generally what they do is unlock the frame rate, throw ultra wide support on there, add the upscaling and frame gen technologies, And
You know,
then
it's
support, like
it's
ultra wide
Extra
screen
quality.
yourself.
what?
Do you use the ultra wide monitor yourself?
No, I don't. I ultra wide. It's weird to my eyes. I can't do it.
So it's
Right.
it's interesting though, as we said diminishing returns in different categories, but isn't it interesting as we kind of dive further and further into this discussion that what I find interesting is as we get closer and closer to what will be next generation, you say PS6, or in this case even next year with PS5 Pro, we'll see. I mean, they're still working on it, and we'll see what actually comes to fruition. David, great assessment with the delay being possibly one of the reasons for the delay, to see how that FSR4, PSSR merger kind of works together and how that plays through for GTA 6. But, Dessinger, when you say a lot of those improvements there, take out the keyboard and mouse and stuff like that and things like that, when you get down to it, and don't get me wrong, PC gamers can always say, well, you guys are finally getting there. You guys are finally getting around. That's fine. You can use that tactic if you want to. That's not a problem. But it seems as we creep closer and closer, there'll be a lot closer returns as we get into next generation. Now, of course, a 5090, a 6090, soon 7090 are going to bring new technologies, right? But I mean, you'll see some similarities. You're seeing ray tracing. You're going to start seeing the ability with FSR4 on console moving forward. That's going to bring frame rates to where even PC gamers will kind of raise their eyebrows and go, "Wow, oh wow, I didn't think the consoles would ever get there." I'm just wondering.
Well, it's funny you say that, because it's like ray tracing has finally caught on now. Obviously, that's been out for ages.
Right, it's been out a bit, yeah. Mm-hmm.
But also, you have to bear in mind, like, by the time the PS6 comes out, we're probably going to have like the 70 series or the 80 series cards by then, I would imagine. The way NVIDIA release schedule, like, we'll probably have 80 series by then. So basically, the PS6 will do what you can do, like what the 5090 or the 5080 can do. That's what the PS6 will do, and then PC will, because obviously,
right,
they can't
that's
upgrade.
Not factoring in. That's on a modular level. That's not factoring in the, to the metal optimization, the finer, more granular optimization that a closed platform facilitates. Like, again, Death Stranding 2 is punching well above its weight on a base PS5. Of course it is, because that's the Decima engine been built around specifically for that hardware, and so you're getting the performance of a 3070 on a base PS5. Whereas if you run that game on a 3070 rig when it comes out, you're probably going to get at parity, something close to that. The same was with Horizon Forbidden West. That's why I'm saying a 3070 is, yes, it's anecdotal right now, but there is a basis of evidence to suggest that the first Death Stranding game, along with Horizon Forbidden West, both perform at the level of 3070 on a base PS5. That is on a modular level, a 2070 Super. So it does.
The funny thing is as well, Last of Us on PC, I remember in Digital Foundry's test, even at the very max settings on PC, as in the best you could do, there were still areas that the PS5 looked better. And it's probably just like minor things in development that overlooked, or just differences in how they port things. But I did find that interesting. And also the other thing is, you're not necessarily guaranteed a better version, because we have had ports on PC which launched quite buggy. Obviously, Last of Us Part 1 was
Horizon Zero Dawn is another one.
But
then I think that comes down
to West. I think on Steam it was the first week it was like 70%, because some people had issues with it, and obviously now it's like much higher. But yeah, so it's not necessarily like guaranteed that the PC port is going to be necessarily better than the console version, ideally, like in terms of polish and stuff.
So you also have to factor in who's doing the port, and you also have to factor in experience, because like a lot of the in-house PlayStation studios don't have much experience porting to PC because they haven't needed
That's right,
to.
Yeah.
Like,
that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah. It's the specialist.
So, like, you have Nixis. Nixis is generally doing well, but it's like they also have people like Iron Galaxy, which not the best choice, but I mean, you do what you gotta do for ports, I guess. Like Nixis is starting to get the hang of it, so I think any Nixis port would probably be a good bet that is going to be good. And in-house, they just need to learn to port, and once they get it down, the ports will come together, I think.
So I have a couple of super chats here that I do want to move over to what we said we were going to discuss, the meat and potatoes of Game Pass and the discussion of the week. But shout out real quick to Andy Hart. Andy says, morning all, saw on YouTube PS6 delayed. Is it rumor or official? Also looking forward to the state of play. We'll watch after the night shift. Shout out to Andy Hart. The PS6 being delayed when it hasn't even had a release date it's kind of cart before the horse there a bit.
They haven't even finished developing the specs for it. Like, why? This is the thing that irritates me the most about online, the people that are online, social media, influencers, gaming, all that sort of stuff. They're in such a rush to move to the next thing. And then the next thing, and then there's such a rush to move to the next thing, All they want to do is get to the next thing and know when it's happening. Like, knowing first or breaking the news first or whatever it is gets you a prize. I'm yet to see anyone get a prize or get some kind of reward for being the first to break news that something's been delayed or something's happening. You can't play it any sooner than the day they let you have it. So what's the panic? Why is it such a major thing to know when's the next iteration? What does it look like? All they're doing is worrying about what's coming and they never enjoy what's here. How can people live in such a miserable existence is beyond me.
It's really, honestly, it's a great point. And the next thing, David, just to add to that is if you really want to have the next iteration, you're really one of those folks that has to have the latest and greatest, and you are a console gamer, the PS5 Pro's out there, and they are saying they're promising even more quality, better specs, even as quick as next year. So I'm with you, David. Let's enjoy the present. Let's not worry about 2-3 years from now. I really think that's just, like I said, the cart before the horse. Andy Hart was also, when we were talking about releases on PC. Andy, I'm not sure what you meant here. He said, didn't Silent Hill 2 remake release same day as PC? That's Silent Hill 2 that's not a PC, that's not a PlayStation first party game. That's not same conversation.
Not me.
So that's all right.
Yeah,
Andy's he's just waking up and heading to work, so that's all right.
And again, you've got third-party deals that are timed console exclusives.
That's
true. That's been the norm for ages. And,
correct.
That
was not one of them.
And China Hero Project titles are PC day one typically, mostly because
they will be.
The Chinese space, the console is still in its fledgling kind of in terms of popularity. Yeah, the PC is the dominant platform over there. It's in fact the only platform really. PC is that dominant there. So it wouldn't be fair to the devs to demand, in that country that that the game like to be.
You'd be sending them out to die, basically. If you
you would. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So there is nuance and context that you got to factor in with statements like that. Not something that Death Singer would know about, of course.
Oh, listen.
I would know all about that, but I don't suck off Kojima. Never mind. I'm not going to get into that.
There we
go. No. You just suck off like flipping. What is it? Thoughts and mods, nude mods for Stellar Blade and all that.
But you guys don't.
I
mean, to be fair, unless you played Stellar Cheeks.
Mate, I would, at least Kojima is of the caliber for me to call him daddy. 100%. At least he is. He is of that caliber.
Wolf, what's good to know is these two are still going to send each other holiday cards regardless of how the show goes. Shout out to Glassdoor Gamer. He says, love how Nib and Dave break down the business metrics, and Craps rants are always legendary. He says, Death Singer, switch to Linux if you're a real PC gamer. There's Glassdoor hitting them there. Full Sweat Tryhard. I want to just say shout out to Full Sweat Tryhard, who thank you very much for the super chats. I always appreciate him there. Mary Wilcox also doing a great job. She's always in there. I just love to see you guys getting along. You guys are fantastic people in the chat. You guys had a disagreement. I didn't see what all the disagreement was because I'm also running the show, but you guys are both big supporters of the channel. I'm glad that you guys are both fine right now, and I appreciate that. Love both of you guys being here week in and week out. Thank you. Archwar Angel says, what's up, Mooch? I'm here. Xbox is dead. PlayStation is dead. PC Master Race is the way to go. He laughing emoji. He then says, just kidding, people. Don't take this too seriously. Shout out to Archwar Angel. He's been here for a long time as well. Glintzer goes, how about the Mets? He goes, I'm begging you to stop the PC talk. All right, listen, Glintzer, you got it. And by the way, the Mets... we're not going to talk sports on the show today because that'll piss people off more than PC talk. I will tell you this much: the Mets are going to need to do something big at the trade deadline if they really want to compete. That being said, more in pitching than anything else. Nonetheless. So David Faulkner is on the show, as I call him, the community's accountant. And David, you made a good point. You said, Mooch, before we get into it, context is king here when we're talking about Game Pass. I understand everyone's going to say, I had people before the show, David, also even telling me, come on, Mooch, it was already debunked. You know, the one thing I do want to just read, David, and then I would love it if you could do the intro that we had when we had a great discussion before the show started, is Christopher says, Christopher Dring here, and I'm just reading the tweets, you know, or the posts on X. You know, he said, I asked for clarification on the Game Pass profitability claim and was told no first-party costs are included. Then an individual said that's factually not true from the FTC leaks. He says Microsoft allocates GP revenue based on players and hours spent for first-party games. Christopher then replies with, it's literally what Xbox told me. The next day, for us in the States, we woke up to this. He says, okay, I need to clarify something. First, Xbox Game Pass is profitable even when you factor in lost sales for its first-party teams. Sources who would know have told me. So it's interesting. So when he says sources, and I'm not sure here, in the first matter of tweets, which was on July 6th, he says, it's literally what Xbox told me. And then he says here that he has sources that are in the know. Now, are the sources in the know also Xbox people? I'm not sure. But David, you wanted to put this into a better context for the audience to understand exactly where we're going to dive into this conversation. I'll give you the microphone because I think you did an outstanding job before the show started.
So can I just, for emphasis, and give me some rope here to be a little bit more lateral, can you repeat word for word his first tweet, please?
So the first one on July 6th you're talking about when he said, I asked for clarification? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah, the first one.
Yeah, he said, I asked for clarification on the, in quotes, Game Pass is profitable, end quotes, claim, and was told no first-party costs are included.
Right. And then the start of this, not the follow-up to that, but the start of the second tweet on the next day, where he reiterates.
He said, okay, I need to clarify something. First, Xbox Game Pass is profitable, even when you factor in the lost sales for its first-party teams. Sources who would know have told me. And then he goes a bit further into here. Over 18 months ago, I checked with Xbox about what's included in the Game Pass P&L. Basically, I was looking to see if Game Pass's costs factor into the impact to unit sales of their internal studios. I was told that the first-party games have their own P&L separate to Game Pass as they make money via other means. I felt this piece of internal accounting might mean Game Pass is profitable, but it sure does not put pressure on the margins for its internal games, and possibly means some studios don't make as much profit, in any quotes, or any profit at all. And he goes on and on. I can send this to you, David, if you want to read it. But
no, it's all good. I just wanted for you to read it out so that people are listening, and when they listen to this later, it's crystal clear for my immediate comment now. Second tweet does not walk back his first tweet.
Correct, yeah.
His first tweet, he says, stating that first-party costs are not part of Game Pass's profitability calculation. They are not. And we have suspected and effectively known that for years. And this is where the context conversation is extremely important in talking about whether Game Pass is profitable, and in what context is it profitable? Is it profitable as it's some way of generating revenue for Xbox overall? Or is it profitable if it had to stand on its own 2 feet and be sustainable? They're totally different conversations. In his second tweet, all he's doing is clarifying that some source told him that it is profitable, but gives no context around the calculation. They're two totally separate things. And in the second tweet where he says it is profitable even when you factor in the lost sales, that's not a P&L calculation. That is a options analysis or opportunity cost impact for an economic analysis on whether it's sensible to do said project or not, being Game Pass, or for it to exist. You cannot, under any accounting standard. Sorry?
It doesn't include all first-party costs. The first
not development costs, etc.
It's generalized first-party costs, whereas the second one is specifically referring to
lost.
Yeah, so
they're two totally separate tweets, referring to two totally separate things. The second tweet And look, Chris is a journalist, not a financial analyst. He's not an accountant. He's a journalist. So he's relying on other people that are supposedly knowledgeable in the technical aspects of this stuff to provide him with the accurate information. The second part of this tweet where he's saying that even when you factor in these lost sales, it is profitable. We still don't have the context in how they're calculating that profitability. And there is no accounting standard on the planet as exists right now that says you factor in opportunity costs into your profit and loss calculations. It doesn't exist. So anybody who's saying that Chris in the second day's tweet walked back his first day's tweet, you're wrong. There's no other way of saying it. You're wrong. Stop talking about it. You've got no clue what you're saying. So
yeah,
that's
just
the first
in
piece I
layman's
will put
in layman's terms, just so that I can articulate this in a way that I would understand. What you're saying, David, is that we established Xbox Game Pass is profitable in the first tweet because they say it's profitable, but they omit key vital calculations in order to claim it's profitable. And what all they're doing again is saying in the second day, the next day, it is profitable, even if you factor in sales loss. So they're not saying it wasn't profitable and now we're correcting it and saying it is profitable. No, like they're just doubling down saying it's profitable, but we already know, as per the first tweet, that there are first party costs not associated with that calculation.
So
yeah,
that's correct. So in I'll just run through a few points and then I'm going to divert slightly. So bear with me while I try and remember what I said before we started the show, Mooch.
All right.
But Game Pass, and not just Game Pass, PlayStation Plus, all the other sub-services, they account for, in terms of revenue, about 10 to 15% of a gaming platform's overall gaming revenue. Right? And I checked the numbers for PlayStation, it's roughly the same, 14.8 something percent last financial year. So they're generating, let's use 15% as the high watermark because that's the best outcome. They're generating 15% of their total gaming revenue, gaming-based revenue, not including hardware, gaming-based revenue out of their subscription revenue, right? It's coming from their subscription services.
Mm-hmm.
That is arguably the issue because what it's saying is 85 to 90% of their revenue is not coming from subscription services. And that 85 to 90% that's not coming from subscription services, in the case of Xbox, is what's paying for all the first-party studios. And this comes back to accounting principles around timing and matching revenue to when it's earned and expenses matches to revenue when it's generated and all that sort of stuff. What Xbox is doing isn't technically incorrect, but what it does do is it paints a distorted picture of is it actually profitable in a sense of a true or correct profit and loss. The studios are all run as a true profit center, which means they've got a full profit and loss, and they're run down to not just gross profit but net profit point as well. Game Pass is not. So to say it's profitable in isolation is technically and factually incorrect. And the reason for that is because of Chris's first tweet in saying that Xbox does not allocate any of its first party costs against Xbox Game Pass revenue, sorry.
Mm-hmm.
And that's a major thing in itself. So why does that matter? Well, I'll take you through the next few points. Focus on Xbox games financial performance from 2018 to 2022, while Game Pass is in its growth phase, was still 85 to 90% of gaming revenue was coming from the sale of stuff, microtransactions, other subscriptions. It was not coming from Game Pass subscriptions. And this is where the context or the framing of the conversation is super important. What boundaries are we talking about with the focus point of Game Pass being profitable and sustainable and all the rest of it? If we're talking about it as a standalone item being profitable and all these first party costs being excluded and all the funding costs and ROI inputs being excluded and all the overheads and all the rest of it being excluded, well, anything's profitable if you've got no expenditure to put against it.
Mm-hmm.
When you start lobbing and allocating the expenditures for running it, direct expenditure, indirect expenditure, and the overheads, you start feeding that back in, it starts to chew up stuff really quickly. If you said, as a round number, 15% of all of Xbox's expenditure from direct costs, indirect costs, overhead, SG&A, corporate allocations, all the rest of it was to be allocated back against the revenue generated by Game Pass, you would find that it's not going to be profitable at all because of the huge amount of costs that would then be portioned back into it. Because let's not forget, Xbox overall is making losses at the moment still because it's being back funded by other areas. If you then look at that's in total, and if it had to stand alone as its own P&L, but it doesn't. But it's also completely fine to say, well, we're not going to allocate any costs against it because, and this is answering the question that was brought up that you said, Wooly, about that. Get the other guy's name, Eric Strickland, saying that it's a gateway. If Game Pass is considered just another method or way of generating revenue, same as like a payment gateway or a storefront or something like that, then the revenue that's generated from it should be apportioned back across the studios and
it's not.
to boost their revenue piece, but it's not. So they're keeping them slightly separate for a reason. They want to see internally how much the Game Pass subscription revenue generation affects in isolation against the rest of it. Now, it's still got to, when you pull all these numbers together and add them all together, it still comes down to total income for Xbox, total expenditure for Xbox, some minor adjustments gets us a number at the bottom. And that's the stuff that ends up going into the financial reports that get published.
It absolutely baffles me, Folky. Sorry, mate. Just hold that thought for 1 second. It just bouncing off your point. It baffles me that Eric Strickland and others would, just after a week, there've been hundreds and hundreds of layoffs, and Xbox will never be the same again because of the crazy amount of damage that's been done to studios. That, you know, for them to suddenly argue like Game Pass has no impact on this, like, to me, it's just how much more damage needs to be done before you see the wood through the trees. Anyway, carry on.
Well, and that leads into the last couple of points that I'm getting to. So segue is brilliant. You've always been good at segues. So with the context, that context is Game Pass sustainable and how is it affecting the industry? Well, the major issue that a lot of us have always taken with it is this whole notion of play it day one on Game Pass and cannibalization of sales. If the subscription isn't really shifting and games are going in there day one, but the cost of those games are not being apportioned to it, that is a distorted view. The studio is getting absolutely hammered, incurring all the costs for running, because you can't capitalize everything in game development, then amortize it or write it off over a period of time. The cost of running the studios, most of that stuff never makes it into the balance sheet. Most of it is borne when it is incurred. So if you've got studios showing their full P&L with cannibalized or bastardized revenue being lower than what should actually be there, of course they're going to cop it. But then Game Pass is floating around over here with none of those costs apportioned to it. So when the senior managers look at it, and they don't get into the detail, it's not mixed words here. C-level executives who make these decisions don't get into the nuts and bolts and washes detail of how do these numbers come together. They look at numbers on a report, they have a conversation for an hour, they make a decision, and that's it. That's the ruthlessness of how these things work. They will look at it and go, that studio is underperforming. It is not meeting the required targets that we need it to meet. And there's no pathway forward for it to meet those targets. We're going to cancel the project and then decide whether we're going to shut the studio down or not. And if it's performing bad enough, they will. But if they haven't been given the revenue Game Pass that they should have got, of course it's going to look horrible. Especially if they're holding all the costs associated with those game developments and they've put it day one in the Game Pass. So there's a distorted view there.
Game Pass is dev tax.
It is. The issue then is if Game Pass, play it day one Game Pass. Everything's available day one Game Pass. And that becomes a focus point of accessing. And you've conditioned the player base to expect it to be in Game Pass and they're paying whatever month for it. And the studios aren't getting anything out of it and they're copying all the costs. Game Pass is then causing the loss in these other areas. But it's also distorted in people are saying, "Oh, look, Game Pass is profitable." It might be profitable in the P&L, in the management accounting reports, if people are looking at it going, "Yeah, the number looks great," but without actually going through and working out at the detail, applying all the expenditure to it that should be matched against the revenue it's generating, there's no way of knowing. And the problem then is if you reduce the amount of this, say Game Pass as a percentage of gaming revenue goes from 15% to 30% because your sales amount is coming down, then you've got less money in the studios to pay for all these expenditures. You've got to lay off these people. And you've got to lay off these projects, and you've got to stop all this stuff because it's just not generating enough. The alternative is they've raised the prices far enough to continue to generate that level of revenue. But as you raise prices in subscriptions, your subscription numbers tail off. People will eventually divert back to buying the games. And this is what the issue has always been. PlayStation hasn't made and the other subscription services haven't made a deal of saying, we're going to put it in there day one and we're going to do all this stuff day one. That's not to say they don't do it with AA's and other smaller indie games, but they just don't do it as the main focal point of engaging with their customer base. That's what's caused the concern over the last few years. And you can see the result of that model is now that Xbox has got no choice but to try and sell games in other platforms where people buy them. And that's where this whole, well, is Game Pass, if it's profitable, why is it a bad impact on the industry? It's a bad impact on the industry because you just saw thousands of developers get sacked and not just 2 or 3 games, dozens and dozens of games got cancelled because of that.
Yeah.
And now the next
the first
round
party
will
that
be,
suffer.
yeah, everyone's going to suffer from it. The next round of layoffs, which will happen probably in October, November, hopefully they don't do it in December, will be the reaction to have what we've left running that was borderline actually been able to turn the ship. And if they can't turn the ship in the next quarter, same thing will happen again. Whatever that number is that Amy Hood has supposedly given Xbox to meet is quite a substantial number if they've decided to shut down the studio that runs one of their main tentpole games. And if they're scratching around to try and get as many games everywhere as they can, and they're doing licensing deals instead of doing their own hardware work, like it's a broader impact, all because, and it's not wholly and solely Game Pass's responsibility for it, but because Game Pass is causing a distorted view within the whole Microsoft gaming family when you break it down to that level. So the context is important. If we're just talking about, is Game Pass generating money that leads to an overall profitability? Yeah, that's fine. That statement is true and correct. Is Game Pass profitable on its own accord as a standalone unit? No, because we know that that's a distorted view because they're keeping all the first party costs out of it. So, and that's, again, context is super important in this because, if they were doing it properly and it launches day one on Game Pass, and you can also buy it. Well, if you've had, which game was it? Forza Horizon? Or was it Forza Motorsport that had like 2 or 3 or 5 million people playing it?
Yeah.
If they're doing it on player engagement and they had 1 million people buy it and 4 million people access it through Game Pass, then 80% of the cost of developing that game should have been apportioned to Game Pass. But the subscription numbers hardly shifted. Of course they're not going to do that. That's you can't expect
this is the problem.
It doesn't move to do that. And this is where it becomes a grey area.
Yeah, it's a leaky bucket because they haven't. The problem is that they haven't essentialized any of the platforms, so they continue to detract from one another. They detract from Game Pass because they release it on Steam day one, and so Game Pass won't reach that number they need it to make it sustainable, and so they continue to throw money at the taxation of devs, so to speak, at the on a service that they're not committing to fully. And because they're not committing to it fully and not making it essential, it's going to continue to put this strain, especially on in-house studios and on the first-party devs. The only area where it's been successful is it being giving exposure and funding to smaller teams. And
smaller team,
go figure. Yeah,
I was going to say, but an interesting thing in Chris's follow-up tweet, a clarification one, was he put, I was told that first-party games have their own P&L separate to Game Pass as they make money via other means. But the issue there is that the amount of money they can make is stifled specifically because of Game Pass. Game Pass is cannibalizing their sales. So the extent to which they can make money from other means is obviously massively compromised. And while they may include it in the P&L of Game Pass, the loss of sales, the first party studios have their own P&L separate to that, which is obviously impacting them because we can see layoffs, studio closures like Turn 10. When Forza Motorsport ranks in the year-to-date GSD rankings, keep in mind, racing games usually sell better in Europe. When it ranks 463 in the annual sales, and all the previous releases have been in the top 50, that is basically primarily because of the cannibalization of Game Pass. Same, obviously, Hi-Fi Rush and all these other games. And more to that, we actually have specific evidence now of what kind of cannibalization we can see. Because Call of Duty Black Ops 6 was added to Game Pass, 67% fewer sales on Xbox in the UK, and more than 70% loss in the United States. In the United States, PlayStation accounted for 82% of all sales, up from like 50 or 40 something previously. So, like, we literally have direct correlation and evidence of the cannibalization that can take place. And here's the kicker, right? They lose 70% of sales on Xbox because of its inclusion in Game Pass. And the same quarter that it drops, content and services revenue is up only 2% in the same quarter that one, they released Black Ops 6, which sells more than Modern Warfare 3 the previous year, mostly because of PlayStation. I believe it's plus 32% sales or something like that. It's just so PlayStation compensated for the lost sales, basically. And then on top of that, on top of the release of Black Ops 6, you have a 20% price increase to Game Pass and Indiana Jones, all in the same quarter. And it's only a 2% increase in overall revenue, content and services revenue. So, you know, like, again, like, the math ain't necessarily mapping because PlayStation, sure enough, PlayStation sales compensated for the difference. But if Black Ops 6 is a much bigger release than Modern Warfare 3 because, you know, it was better received, it, you know, had more hype behind it, etc., in reality, it's not really a 67% loss of sales on the Xbox side. It's probably more because on the PlayStation side, it was plus 30 something. So, you know, it should have been plus something on the Xbox as well because it's a bigger release than the previous year. Instead, it's minus 70%. So, you know, it's a dramatic drop in sales and revenue. And even though PlayStation selling more filled the gap, you know, basically it didn't make any tangible difference to the Game Pass subscriber count. I think the LinkedIn excerpt from a few weeks ago had it at 1 million growth. But is 1 million subscriber growth worth it when you've capitulated 70% of Xbox sales and 30% of PC sales because of Game Pass cannibalization? Like, to me, that doesn't seem like a worthwhile balance. And I think, if they keep separating the P&L like this and they don't look at the overarching impact of Game Pass, I think they're just going to keep having these sort of catastrophic impacts and cuts. And further to Chris's point, and I did mention this to Chris in his responses, we shouldn't really just limit the impact of Game Pass to just first-party games, because it's also conditioning consumers on Xbox to buy fewer third-party games. And actually, third-party multi-platform games is the lion's share of revenue and sales. I believe, like PlayStation, over 50% of their revenue comes from the 30% cut they make from third parties, not actually first-party sales. So if because of Game Pass, people are buying fewer third-party sales as well, they just play whatever's on the subscription instead of buying games. And in addition to that, because Game Pass is on PC and Game Pass is on, Fire Stick or Samsung TV or on their mobile or whatever, say they opt to use Game Pass on one of those alternative devices that do not have a 30% cut from the store, that is another wider impact to Microsoft's, revenue or whatever. That is a direct impact of Game Pass, because someone who would have bought the 360, Series X and S, may have just opted to use Game Pass on a different platform instead, and now they've lost out on an ecosystem sale, and with it, all those 30% cuts that consumer would have spent in the Xbox ecosystem. So there's a lot of these kind of additional cost ramifications to Game Pass that is not necessarily being considered in the wider, whether it's cannibalization of first party or third party, and third party sales, I should say, because the third party stuff is probably more important, and then all these other things as well. So yeah, I think until Microsoft, I mean, maybe they do, I don't know what goes on behind the scenes. Obviously what they're going to say publicly and for shareholders might be different to what goes on behind the scenes, but yeah, if they don't sort this stuff out, we're just going to keep seeing more and more severe cuts. And
more a lot of people, and those are interesting points, Nib. The one thing that I always ask, and I've been asking it for quite some time, is people were always saying back in the day, oh, it'll be a loss leader. Microsoft can afford to lose money. We're at a point where they're tired of that, and I think my question for you guys, and again, it's a question, is knowing what you just said and what David had just run through. You see that we say, let's wait to see what happens when Call of Duty goes in there. Call of Duty's gone in there. Call of Duty did not make, I don't believe it made the impact that they wanted to. I'm not sitting there at Redmond, so I'm not saying I know. It doesn't seem it with that 1 million new subscriber count over the course of the 12 months, including Black Ops 6. So when it comes down to it, Nib, just to kind of piggyback off your last statement right there, where you said, well, we'll have to wait and see what happens if it doesn't go. If it doesn't go further up, will they start to let go of more people? Will they close more studios? My other question would be this. Is there a situation where Xbox does step back from Game Pass? Or is it one of those things where we say, because David gave a great example of what's going on with Game Pass and how it's being handled and how they're looking at it internally. If Microsoft's not going to a dedicated console, like in a traditional sense, next gen, we don't know. These are all hypotheticals. And they're going to go with Asus or Hewlett-Packard or whoever they're going to go with and put an Xbox sticker on it moving forward. Does having Game Pass in that sense, I don't see them getting rid of Game Pass if they're going to do that, because at that point, then it's like Ubisoft Plus. It's like anything else. It's like, here's our service. We'll reduce studios and we'll just have that there. But if they're going to go with the traditional sense and have a console that's Xbox and it is their hardware, do you guys see Game Pass being around for the long haul, or do you see this also where Microsoft's done this with Mixer, they've done this with Zune, they've done this with a bunch of different things? Listen, they tried it, they gave it a shot. The numbers are not increasing subscription-wise year after year. One of the biggest games that would keep people coming back time after time in Call of Duty didn't make that move. Starfield, which was going to be Bethesda, one of their biggest acquisitions, supposed to be that next leap. You had your Fallouts, you had this. Now Starfield was supposed to be there. That didn't hit. You heard the numbers and how things are selling and not performing. They closed. Turn 10 is one of the most talented groups out there. So, console wars aside, that is a talented developing team, and that game just didn't hit the last time. So I guess my question is Game Pass sustainable moving forward, or is Microsoft thinking that would be on the chopping block at some point and they would go back to traditional sales on an Xbox console and then rely also on Sony, or if they did business with Nintendo moving forward and PC, of course?
I mean, look at their history of how they've just dropped things.
That's what I'm saying, Wolf. Yeah. I mean,
like when they dropped Mixer, like out of nowhere,
that was
there
shock.
was no warning leading up to that.
Yeah.
And they just paid Ninja all that money for his deal.
And Shroud. I don't know if Shroud got his money, but Shroud was supposed to be was it Shroud that was supposed to be next? I don't know if it was him, but whichever. Those are still two very big streamers. Wolf, go ahead. I apologize.
Yeah. And then boom, out of nowhere. And I was like, wait a minute. We're talking millions here that just went into this and now it's gone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The thing is, though, with the way that they cannibalize their sales, Wolf, and can they recoup getting their customer back to buying games? Right now, I think Nib just said it best, Wolf, when he said you take a game like Expedition 33, which I'm sure did well as far as engagement and people clicking on it and playing the game on Game Pass who are current subscribers. But you got to keep in mind, games like Expedition 33 aren't what we would call, and correct me if I'm wrong, they're not console selling games. No one's like, I gotta go get Expedition 33 and buy an Xbox Series X and pay $20 a month so I can play that game. That's not really what that, it's an added benefit to those that have the service.
I don't see them doing that.
the devs viewed the devs of Expedition 33 outwardly spoke about when they secured a Game Pass deal, and they said yes, with the game, thanks to Game Pass deal, we've now got some added funding for the game. Mm-hmm. So that's what they view Game Pass as. They view Game Pass as funding and exposure. They don't view Game Pass as ongoing return on investment. They don't view Game Pass as a revenue maker. They view the deal with Microsoft as a wad of cash,
and get the game out the door,
and the service as a platform to give a game exposure, so that it can sell not on Xbox but on PC and PlayStation. That's the bargaining chip that Microsoft have with indie devs, with small time devs who need that added funding. And it's a great chip. It's a great thing. They could be a real helpful boon to the industry, but instead they made this balls to the wall, non-discriminate, completely void of any strategy. Every game day one on Game Pass, every first party, and what that's done is that has made them compromise on being a boon to the industry, because they've sought to control IP in order to avoid sales cannibalization long term. But if they kept the deals and the games smaller, it would be better. It would provide benefits that PlayStation Plus has, but greater because it's on more platforms. It's more accessible. Game Passes, it's accessible on PC. PS Plus isn't. So it would be this great boon for smaller devs. Like, perfect example is like Sandfall Games with CrossFire. Mm-hmm. Unfortunately, they just, like I've said time and time again, where they've dropped the ball massively is direction and really knowing what they want to do. It feels like they've been very reactive instead of keeping a clear goal in mind and seeing it through. They haven't thought this through properly.
So let me Wolf, go ahead if you want to add a point, Wolf.
To answer your original question though, I don't think they just abruptly shut it down or get rid of it entirely.
Right.
But I do think they start taking things away. Maybe that day and date goes away at some point. Who knows? Maybe they bring that into a different tier now, and you got to pay even more for that one. I mean, I don't think it sticks for too long.
That's the thing, and I think we're going to see more tiers, or we're going to see the tiers that they've already created differential slightly, where if you want the day and date, that's going to be, they're kind of doing that in a sense with the tiers they have now with Ultimate, Core, and I can't remember what the other one is.
Yeah, they're already testing that. They're already testing that out. So if you want day and date for certain games, you can't be at the bottom tier. You've got to be in the middle tier. If you want early access to those day and dates, you've got to be the top tier. And then they tested that. I can't remember which game they did it with, but it's sort of not worked because it hasn't had the uplift in the tiers, because you can see it in the revenue numbers. It's not cranking up the increase.
Right.
They're still offering it at $1 or free on PC for the first month, or when you get Windows, or get free for 3 months on something, or it's still on cereal boxes and all that sort of stuff. So I think the challenge is, how do they shift it from what they've been banging on and promising to everyone for the last half a decade, and transitioning it over to something like what PlayStation has. And I'm not saying that they need to replicate it, because they've got opportunities to do better, but at the same time, having things go in day one doesn't make sense. You're either all in on that or you're not on that at all.
Right.
Having things go in day one at different tier levels, the third party and second party arrangements makes sense, but you've got to have those third party and second party arrangements. And if you're like the CrossFire in 33, if you're handing out a wad of cash to a developer to get the game in Game Pass, and then you've got a library of 250 plus of those, they add up really quickly. Mm-hmm. So you're either paying peanuts for it to happen, or you've got to really crack the wallet open to get the big games in there. And I honestly, the last big game that went in there, I couldn't tell you if it wasn't that wasn't a first party one, that wasn't a day one launch. I know they put then Metaphor 3 Fantasio in there 6 or 12 months later or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
That wasn't cheap, but that was one in 2 years of a major selling title that's gone in there. Have ABK, and they've dumped a heap of ABK games in there, but they haven't brought the costs of those things over to align with it. That, as we said before, but there's no brand new games really going into that service that are, going to be cheap enough to maintain it. So unless you're going to go, as I said this 2019, 2020, unless you're going to not sell games and put everything into that basket, which at the moment would be a death knock if they haven't got Microsoft supporting it anymore, you've got to position it to be, that's where your whole back catalogue should sit.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you put the 12-month-old games before the next one's coming out to entice people to sign up to it, and give people that's where your backlog should be. People's backlog. Treat it like people's backlog piece.
The problem with
have the content there.
The problem with coming up with even some of these concepts, I'm sure Microsoft and the folks at Redmond have already done all this, is that what happened was when Phil was on that one podcast and he said we lost the worst generation, which I had said, before the Xbox Series, right when the Xbox Series came out, is you had everybody buy their digital content, and PS4 was a landslide victory over the Xbox One. And that's where everyone's friends went to. That's where they bought their software. That's where they have their digital games. It was a digital era. Now we don't even talk about physical versus digital. The DRM talk, that's all out of the way now because everyone's has DRM in their home for any sort of media for the most part. So my point being is that they've looked at all of those avenues. To go back to a traditional sense and change Game Pass drastically right now, I don't think it helps them any further either, David, because you'll lose even the people that you currently have. If they backstep it, to where they say, well, now you're going to have to, pay this higher tier for day and date, or take the highest one they have currently in Ultimate and raise that even further, like you said, they risk losing even more people in the service. And to change things right now, you're not going to get people to go from PS4, PS5 now back to a new Xbox. And then they're going to leave even more games that they've purchased over the last 5 years when they hadn't done that earlier. So it's kind of compiling on Xbox at this point, and where I think they feel like they're kind of, do you see what I'm saying? I think a change is not even in their cards. My question from you from a financial stance is Game Pass the way it currently is, the way that they're going, is that something where if they don't make a traditional Xbox and they just let Asus put an Xbox sticker on their box for next generation, the way things are going, is it sustainable? Let's not use the word profitable. Is it sustainable for Microsoft to have it as a service like Ubisoft Plus or what EA does? Like Detzinger's always saying, hey, I'll get Ubisoft Plus, I'll play the game for a month, I'll beat it, and then I'm done with it. Is that something that Microsoft can keep as a third-party publisher moving forward if they're not going back to the traditional sense of the console?
But that they're all very valid questions, and therein lies the problem they're trying to deal with. They stand still, they're not going to achieve anything. They have to pivot or move to something else.
Yeah.
But if they've got a lack of content, then it doesn't matter what they do. They're cooked.
They're in the lose-lose situation.
If they're relying on first-party content, they just had a heap of it pulled out from under them. And if they're then having to go and source third-party content to put in there, they've lagged on third-party deals and engaging with a lot of the big publishers for a long time now. And outside of America, they've effectively got no footprint left. So there's costs associated with building up those relationships. There's costs associated with getting those games in there.
Mm-hmm.
And again, it's a couple of years old now, but it's an absolute joke to think that they were going to offer, what was it? Was it only a couple of $1 million or something for Larian to put Baldur's Gate 3 in there? It's insane to think that they would put the value of that so low, and then they don't have the money anymore. They bet the house on ABK, and it is biting them in the ass, and not just Xbox. It's biting Microsoft in the ass in a big way. They don't have the freedom to just go and throw money at this thing anymore. And I hate to consider where it may land. I don't think they'll turn it off. They can't afford to do that, because if they're going to turn it off, they might as well just jack the price up and get something out of it.
Right.
But if they're to a point now where they've got no way of funding the growth. They need to turn it into something else. The only way I see this moving forward is to actually have a contraction within their entire gaming area to focus on high value, which they're doing, focusing on high value projects that are going to get them a return, like a really decent return on investment. And they're going to have to beg and plead and scrimp with third parties to get games in there. And they're really going to have to engage with indies and not hope that the indies engage with them. But in doing all that, they've got to change their contract. They can't be engaging with indies and smaller developers and publishers saying, whatever you build for us has to be playable across PC, Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, and available on Game Pass to be accessible through all these other means. Because that's putting more pressure on devs to fund that build. And when you look at the alternatives being Steam, easy to develop for, or PlayStation, very supportive in developing for, and they've got one SKU to deal with, or Steam's got effectively one SKU to deal with, just different ways of doing it. There's a reason why Steam's got 15,000 games released on it last year. There's a reason why PlayStation added over 1,000 games to its catalog last year. Xbox had something like 200 games added to its catalog. It's chalk and cheese difference. So to fix it, there's other things they need to be doing up the pipeline before it gets to even to the consumer point. But if they stand still, they're risking the whole thing being turned off. And it sounds dramatic, and I've said it before, when you're at the bottom of the totem pole in a big corporate company, as you mentioned before, Mixer and the other ones they've done, they will turn it off to save money, because a couple of $1 billion loss is an impact. If they just turn everything off and it costs them half $500 million to get out of it, they're still $1.5 billion better off by not having it. And that is a scary thought. Again, I said a couple of years ago, instead of buying ABK, Microsoft would be best to sell Xbox and take 15 or 20 billion for it. And people shouted me down from the rooftops, Xbox is worth more than that. It's worth more than that. It's not if it's not generating cash positive circumstance, and it's certainly not worth that to Microsoft if they're having to pour money into it to keep it propped up to stay in that industry.
Yeah.
What's the point of being in an industry if you've spent 10 years making losses and you're going to be another 10 years before you see any returns?
Yeah.
You might as well just not bother. And that's the
Continuous
reality of the
bleeding of
decisions
money.
that they're going to make. That's right. And that's the reality of the decisions that need to be made. How does that affect us as consumers? Well, it's not great if we've got less studios and less games being made and all this other options, but it's a saturated market. So maybe that's just how it turns out. But it's they've got they're limited by their funding availability now.
Well, when you say pivot, so let's not ignore what has happened in this year here, where we've seen now Xbox pivoting and going and selling their games on PlayStation. Now we haven't seen the fruits of that nature come through yet, right? We haven't seen, like, when Gears E-Day comes out or one of the bigger games, we've seen some of their older titles releasing. A lot of people were really ranting and raving. I know that Forza Horizon 5 did well for what it was, being an older game, but that's not the big numbers. Microsoft wants to see big numbers on PlayStation, right? That's what they want to see, big sales over there. Could that be considered is that enough of a pivot? It is a pivot, but is it enough of a pivot, David? And then you have Game Pass holding up your own tent pole, if you will, but then you have PlayStation with where your sales were, because they cannibalize their sales on their own platform. So now they're trying to obtain that over on the PlayStation and maybe even the Nintendo on certain IP.
That's another set of good questions. I think look, their pivot to releasing games on other platforms where the consumer base is conditioned. I use that word a lot, and it's true. They're conditioned to buy the games. That's a positive step for revenue generation for them, because it gives them access. It's the same for all of them. They're putting games on other platforms. It gives them revenue generation potential. They need to be able to sell them, though. And again, it comes back to the content that they have access to, or the content that they're providing. I think Xbox has missed a massive opportunity by wheeling out a heap of their back catalog and just pouring it into other platforms. Get as much as your old stuff upgraded for as cheap as possible, and get it on the PlayStation and get it on the Nintendo. Get it everywhere you can get it, because it's sitting there dormant doing nothing. And you've got 50, 60, 70 million minimum players who have never played it on an Xbox, and it's their first time being exposed or even considering playing this stuff. If you spend, I don't know, let's say you spend $1 million per title to get 30 titles on the PlayStation for their back catalog, and they generate so $30 million in cost, and then generate $10 million in sales each. So there's a 90% ROI on it. Just created a huge amount of revenue for minimal input, and that keeps your dev teams busy, but it also returns revenue to those dev teams to keep them. That's why Naughty Dog's done so many remasters and remakes. They take forever to build games, but they keep releasing remasters and remakes to help fund it because they sell. And PlayStation gamers are happy enough, the general gamers happy enough to front up and buy those remasters and remakes. There's an opportunity there for them to make money without having a massive input of trying to build a new game. And that can give them the time and space they need to get the polish and the production line running for the projects that they now have to reset and reassess. It's buying them time, but it's also generating return for them. So that's one of the things that they've missed. And then another one is just making sure they've got decent content valued appropriately. If you're giving games away, the value of your what you're doing is nothing. You need to put some proper value on it and make it worth the money people are paying. If PlayStation is selling Ghost of Yotei for $80, I don't know if they are, but if that's what they're saying, that's an $80 game, well, don't front up with something that's a 10-hour game that's not even close on the visuals and expect people to pay $70 for it. Go the other way, go down to $50 and you'll sell more. So that's some of the business decisions they need to make, but it's a difference between selling to consumers versus selling to business. And consumers can be quite fickle, and depending on what time of the year it is and how things are going. But the pivot there is they just need more consumers to buy the stuff, and keeping it to their own platform, they haven't been able to find a way of doing that. So, but to be blaming others, like, we lost the worst generation to lose. They did that to themselves. They didn't have to go and be all expansive. They just needed to double down on what was working for them and, bring it up to the next level.
Yeah.
They chose not to. They chose to go expand too fast, too hard, and it's capitulated for them. So
it's true. It's the old, if it's not broke, don't fix it. And Microsoft, listen, when you're a company like Apple, Microsoft, you want to always try to, take your ingenuity and move it forward and do something new. I get that. But they went all in with Game Pass, and they went all in with these acquisitions, and they went all. And the problem, like I said, people said it was, it's easy to. I've been saying this for a long time on the show, is when you take that heart and soul, when you're an indie startup team and you have to fight to keep the lights on, and you need that next game that you've been working on for 4 to 5 years to give bonuses within your dev teams, to allow vacations, to have these corporate outings, to be able to pay to go to and have the booths at all those showings, whether it be PAX East or E3 or whatever it was back in the day. And then you get acquired and the lights are on, and now the salary comes in, and you're allowed a week or two for vacation, and you don't have to worry about, your employees getting fed because they lost a little. Some of the quality kind of dropped too, and of course people automatically point out to the 2 or 3 games that did really well with, like, Indiana Jones and this and that. But for every Indiana Jones, there was a Redfall and Starfield that underdelivered for the cost that was. And I think that's, like you said, they just went all in. If they had just stuck to what worked for them in Xbox 360, and they ran into some hard times at the start of Xbox One. But man, I'll tell you, they did a really good job, in my opinion, at the beginning. I know people didn't like the DRM. They didn't like Kinect. That's fine. You don't have to like that. I understand where you're coming from as a consumer and as a gamer. You didn't like the TV stuff. But they had games out there. They went out and got Titanfall. They went out there and got Rise of the Tomb Raider. They had Forza 5. They went out and got Dead Rising 3. They had Rise. They did things out there in the beginning that were showing fight and that they cared about the console. And I think if they just stuck to their guns, like you said, David, they would have had dividends, especially with that amount of cash flow they had with the $80 billion. How much that could have been spent on other things to make Xbox thrive. Shout out to William Aguilar. I appreciate him being there and stopping by the show. He says, David, if Microsoft is looking to sell Teslas, Elon Musk likes things named XXI Xbox. He goes, He goes, what do you think? Probably not, but still, William, I appreciate you being here. Great. I see him on X all the time. Shout out to Andy Hart too. He goes, my mistake. He was the one that said Andy had made the comment about Silent Hill 2. He says, my mistake. Thought Bloober team were working for PlayStation, so I thought Silent Hill remake was Sony exclusive. No, Andy, that's all right. I appreciate that, buddy. Thank you for the super chat. Thank you for the super chat, William. I appreciate that as well. If nobody has anything on this subject, I did want to ask you guys a couple questions, just some fun stuff here. Now, we'll do a couple speed rounds here as we're approaching 2 hours and a half, and I know, Wolf, you have to leave soon. Wolf, I'll ask you first, and I want to hear Wooly as well, and Death Singer. So, Stalker 2, just real quick opinions. We don't have to get into a 45-minute conversation on it, but Stalker 2 announces that they're going to reach PS5 later this year. What do you think, Wolf? Is this one of those games, again, where in-game pass... it got a lot of attention on the streamer feed from Twitch, etc. A lot of people were streaming that for quite some time. It launched. I played it for a bit on Game Pass. It was very buggy, kind of broken in parts. But the game, listen, you know me. I love post-apocalyptic worlds. So if it comes out and they say, hey, we fixed everything and we throw you guys some PS5 Pro enhancements, Wolf, is this something that could maybe thrive on PS5, or is it a little too late?
Well, I mean... Forza thrived.
That's right.
Got PS5 Pro enhancements.
Forza's a little different story, but yes.
Yeah, I mean, it's honestly, it'd be like flipping a coin at this point if I tell you if it was going to do okay. I've never played Stalker, but I'm probably going to get into it from the beginning and then eventually get to 2. But will it do okay? Who knows? But it will be a telling thing if it does or doesn't. Because when did that game launch? Was it last year?
November.
It's been a while.
So if it sells a decent amount and they fix things, then maybe some of these games do have some legs to stand on. But if it doesn't do well, then it wasn't going to do well if it sold at launch on PlayStation anyway. So.
Well, that's that. So Willie, actually, Wolf just gave a great volley there for you to spike down. So he says if it didn't do well there, but does this kind of tell some third-party devs, hey, you know what? We were doing a deal with Microsoft. They gave us a bag of money. Maybe that bag of money was definitely worth it, too, for the Stalker devs. I'm not really sure. I didn't read into it too far. I don't remember if they made comments about Game Pass or they did not. That I don't remember. But is it something that if they see the game does well on PlayStation, it's a sign that says, you know what? Honestly, I don't mind being in Game Pass, but I want time to be able to develop this for PlayStation as well, so I can at least reap the benefits of those sales on day one when the game launches.
I think Stalker 2. I've got it. I've got it on GeForce Now.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. And it is a great game. It is, but it's not Metro. Actually, I think people initially will compare the two because let's face it, they're both post-apocalyptic, Chernobyl kind of that whole zone kind of vibe going on. But we do play very differently, and I think. A large part of this will depend on the marketing. I genuinely believe the devs will have to fork out some dough on decent marketing to get the game to sell. Maybe they could strike a deal with PlayStation, so PlayStation will take up some of the marketing costs for maybe a slightly higher cut of the sales. That kind of stuff can be done, but if the devs have the marketing costs for those trailers, and if PlayStation really pushes it out, I think people will buy it 100%. I think it initially releasing on Xbox as an exclusive, it was a 3-month exclusive. I know you've got some absolute donuts on Twitter, like Snap Blast, whatever his name is, are trying to suggest it's a year-long exclusivity deal because it's coming out in a year after its initial release on PlayStation. But no, they wouldn't be able to announce it 8 months after its initial release if they were still under exclusivity contract. They wouldn't be able to announce it on PlayStation. They probably wouldn't have been able to work on it. That's why it's releasing in a year's time, is because after that 3-month exclusivity contract is over, then they started working on the ports as well as the continual updates and bug fixes. You know, the whole AI system that Stalker prides itself on. It was broke. It was broke for the first couple of months, so they needed to really work on that. Also, with mod support, it's kind of a big deal. Like, if that is a thing that is creeping its way into more and more games now, where you can have console-based mod support. And, like, there is a market for it, but the game is extremely hardcore, guys. It's not got a lot of the quality of life that Metro Exodus, for example, has. There is a lot more streamlined Metro Exodus.
Well, Metro Exodus, that was last generation.
Yeah, but in some ways, guys, like, I don't know why the Stalker 2, on a visual level as well, it was downgraded from its initial reveal. Quite majorly so. It's kind of like it's not really spoken about for whatever reason. Like, I'm not hating on it.
No.
It does have at times. It does look a bit dated, believe it or not. It does feel like you're playing one of those.
Good. Nick, what are you saying?
It doesn't. I was going to say it was actually one of my most anticipated Xbox exclusives, but I didn't even finish it. I was so disappointed by it. I don't know. Maybe I have like rose tinted view from the previous games, but this just feels like an antiquated game. Like, it just, in every way, from the visual, the gameplay,
exactly.
it has this jank to it and this kind of like cumbersomeness, where it just feels like a game from like a decade or two ago. But
it feels last gen. Yeah,
and I don't mean visually, but everything mechanically.
Mechanically, for sure.
It was glazed. Yes. It was glazed a lot, but as like a visual masterpiece. But it really isn't, guys. On max settings with ray tracing and everything, like, it still looks dated. It really does. Like, I don't see what. I thought I was going mad. Like, what I'm seeing, it doesn't look spectacular.
It's weird. Even like the animations and some of the like creatures and stuff, they're just so dumb.
Oh, the AI is shocking, bro. The AI of the animals and creatures is terrible.
The atrocity, the beasts, they're like, it's the most rudimentary designs, and they do really basic. They just run around, like, they barely attack you sometimes. They just, clomber around, and you just, I don't know, like, and when you it's like they're basically bullet sponges. And after like shitloads of ammo, they'll go down in the most mundane way. Like, it won't even be a good death animation. And I'm like, I don't know. Like, after a while, I was just like, nah, this isn't it.
It was also and again, I only played a few hours of it, so I'm not giving it a review or critiquing it to the farthest extent, because it did interest me. I love post-apocalyptic world, but the face animations, it was almost, how we were saying Starfield, they had like that faceless. Looked like you were just, looking. It was that kind of anime. It wasn't engaging. It didn't. I don't know. It felt a lot like the interactions with the NPCs and the story and the cat. It just felt like it was a very end of 360, early, Xbox One, PS4 era, in the sense of how that was. Not the visuals, but the animations and the mechanics.
Not gonna lie, it makes Metro Exodus look like the sequel to Stalker 2. Not even joking. It really does. It feels like a prequel.
The torches on guns and your own torch, like, they don't leave lighting and shadows properly. And I know that seems like a weird nitpick, right? But hello, it's a game where you're like a survivor game, kind of vibe. And you're in the dark the times. And I'm like, bro, like, there was games like 2-3 decades ago that had these things. And this doesn't have it. Even Metro had it. So I don't understand why, like, it doesn't have like these basic like dynamic lighting systems just from your torchlight. And I was like, again, I understand they went through it like with development because of Ukraine and everything like that, but I would say it's probably one of my biggest disappointments in a very long time.
I will say that the dev team, just to put that out there, just to put it out there, though, Willie, we should mention, the devs did have a very hard time. They were going through the war, and there was a lot going on for those folks. So to get it out was kind of a marvel in that sense. But I will say that's why I brought it up as a topic, and I found it very interesting that it comes to PS5 with Pro. Well, I don't know if I'm still waiting to see. The wording was very interesting. how they said that the PS5, they're in development with PS5 Pro enhancements. Sometimes I feel like that's not always going to be the, if you will, day one. I could see the Pro enhancements coming slightly after, which is fine. But that's when I would like to try it again and see this. The dev team may have just needed more time for it to cook, to be honest with you. It had been delayed a bunch of times. Go ahead, Will. I just wanted to make that clear because that may have impacted the initial results as well.
I would definitely get it on a sale again because I've got it on Steam.
Yep.
And like for my PS5 Pro, it would be something I'd buy for $29.99 on a sale. But yeah, they'll have to. I don't think they should sell this full price. I do think they need to sell it at the 40 or 50 quid range max.
Interesting.
Because it is not a 70 quid game. It's not quality wise. It's just not there. It's not. And I think we were bamboozled a little bit with the marketing of this game. And the trailers, they were a sight to behold. But when you're actually playing it, it's like it feels a bit like when you played No Man's Sky for the first time compared to the trailers. There's this kind of empty feeling in your chest, kind of like,
that is a game that literally came back from the dead.
It really did.
Yeah.
What a great community there, for sure.
Well, not even a 4090 could save it, bro. Not even a super rig could save Stalker 2 from those flaws, from it looking dated, which also just goes to show that you can brag about the hardware that you want, Death Singer, but a game's only as good as its devs and as good as the devs make it. Not as good as the hardware ultimately.
Well, regardless of all that, as a fan of both franchises, playing them all. If you played the original Stalker, you kind of went from the trailers. You knew what was up straight away. It's just more Stalker, right? Mm-hmm. Because first Stalker was cult classic. It's it didn't sell relatively well, but for us who played it, we enjoyed it because it was the whole dark, gloomy, dreary, danger everywhere, open world. And that has always been the differentiator between the Metro series and Stalker series. Was Metro, Exodus, they changed it a little bit to be a bit more freer, but for the most part, it's linear, story progressive. Exodus, they expanded the area a little bit, and it's got a bit more potential in exploration.
Mm-hmm.
But it's still not a Stalker, which is an open world sandbox survival game. Essentially, that's what it is.
Right.
Whereas Metro is not that. So they're fundamentally different in that way, even though they have the same atmosphere and
it's not sandbox, by the way. That word is totally overused. It is not sandbox.
But well, I mean, either way, they're still two completely different games in that respect.
Do you think Death Singer, you played it on PC, correct? You did try Stalker 2, or you did not go for it?
Yeah, and it was working at launch.
Right, no, and that's not even, that wasn't where I was going. My thing is this, that's the one thing is, it's been out now, it still seems, I've seen a few people on X saying it's still not working well on PC and Xbox, so my hope was that they had fixed the issues and the PS5 Pro version will come out and maybe be a little bit better, but forget the better, it's just fixed, not buggy. Well, so you're thinking that it really doesn't matter, right? You're thinking to yourself, PS5 Pro, PC, doesn't matter. This game is probably still going to release with some issues on PS5.
I would imagine so. The main reason is I still blame Unreal Engine 5 because it's a piece of shit. And bear in mind, this game was made like in the initial stages of Unreal Engine 5. Like, it's still Unreal Engine 5 games are still kind of dog shit. I mean, you do have the occasional good one that comes out, but they're still trying to work with the engine, and this was one of the earlier games on Unreal Engine 5. And that's why when you look at Unreal Engine 5 games, you kind of have to give it the side eye, because they still haven't mastered the engine. So maybe they put enough time into it now where they've gotten around to it, and they'll come out as complete. But if you told me when it releases on PS5 it's got bugs, I would not be shocked.
No,
no one should be shocked at all.
I will not be shocked whatsoever. All right,
I gotta go.
Wolf.
No.
No, well, let me just say, Wolf. Let me just say thank you because Detzinger, I want to hear your point. Wolf, thank you for being here, but I know you're doing a show after this. Love to have you back on the show, buddy. You let me know anytime you have a Thursday open. We'll get you back on, Wolf. Outstanding. Let people know about the channel and where they can find you.
I'm on pretty much all forms of social media. Same username, Wolfgang Mishima. Same thing with the YouTube channel. I'm a big Resident Evil guy. I'm a big Tekken guy. I'm holding a Tekken tournament in August, my third one. August 17th. I still have 6 spots open if you want to register. It's all on my YouTube channel. I let Xbox people into this tournament and not one has showed up. So I don't know what's going on.
They'll be there. They'll get out there. They'll be there, Wolf.
It's a lot of them.
Just want to say, you have one of my videos on Twitter, by the way. Like
what was that?
You have one of my favorite videos on Twitter. I've seen it so many times. So he's got this video.
Oh, that.
This guy, I won't name any names, but he basically always talks smack on Tekken. He's like, "Oh, I'll beat anyone," blah blah blah. But he always ducks Wolfgang. He never wants to take him on. So Wolfgang got another dude to put on a.
I remember this. Oh man.
Yeah, he still cries about it to this day, saying we tricked him. I mean, yeah, we did because you ran from me before, and I posted the video that you did run from me. But regardless, it blew up the internet the next day. I did not expect that at all. Just shows me how many people didn't like this guy. But yeah, that was hilarious. He had nothing for me. I even popped trophies on a second account beating him, so that was a big part of it. But yeah, I'm about to do a whole pro wrestling thing on my channel too. So I do all that stuff too. So if you're a wrestling fan, you can tune into that later as well. But mainly gaming stuff, Tekken, Resident Evil, a lot of VR stuff. Been doing a lot of Hitman VR stuff. I did the whole platinum in VR, by the way, for that game. So
damn,
yeah, that was fun.
Wolf. Yo, by the way, honestly, your production value, everything you do is fantastic. It's top notch, Wolf. So please keep doing what you're doing, man. We love the content. Like I said, we'd love to have you back on the show when you have a Thursday night available.
Definitely. As we get more Resident Evil Requiem stuff, yeah, definitely you'll be hearing from me.
Let's go. All right, sure. Wolf, thanks for being here, buddy. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Have a good night, guys.
Have a good night, Wolf. So, Detzinger, I didn't mean to take the mic from you, but go ahead and please finish your thought.
So yeah, it's gonna be Stalker 2 is just heavily modded, so I mean that's just a big difference. But I give it a pickup because I personally enjoy Stalker 2, despite it being broken.
Mm-hmm.
When it works, it's a fun open world survival game.
Mm-hmm.
But I like the aesthetic, and I like both series equally. So it isn't a competition between which one is better. They can live side by side. But if it is fixed, definitely give it a pickup because you're probably in for a good time, especially if you enjoy Metro. If you enjoy the Metro games, definitely give it a pickup.
Well, there you go. I do agree with you there, and Willie even said the same thing. It's Metro-like for sure. Post-apocalyptic, very good. I wish to put a little bit more time or money into the animations and mechanics, but other than that, honestly, the game was intriguing. It just, when I played it, it just felt very dated. But nonetheless, I do want to ask this one last topic for you guys before we go, because we're hitting the 3-hour mark very soon, is what do you guys think? Now, it's almost comical to say. Last of Us comes out, Naughty Dog comes out, says we got chronological mode. And I'm torn here because you guys know I'm a Naughty Dog fan. I'm a Last of Us fan. I've played them both. Got the platinum in both. I've played the original one so many times it's not worth even mentioning on the air. I will say this because I believe Godfather did the same thing when they put 1 and 2 in chronological order, and it really, really made. I had seen 1 and 2 a bunch of times, and watching it in the chronological order was really, really something. I will say this. I'm probably not going to go through and play it all through the chronological mode, but I will say that does change things. To put things in the order of the way things happened, and if you're first time playing through it, man, I would say it's funny because I think it makes the story, I won't use the word better, it changes things. It changes your perception, which, as I'm saying it, guys, tell me if you're riding along with this. The way that you felt when you played 1, you didn't know what was going to come through with 2 years later. And then the way you went through Ellie, and then you went through Abby's story, and you developed the way you felt about Joel and how you felt about Ellie and what happened at the hospital. And I don't want to say spoilers. My God, you should have played it by now. They've only had 67 remasters. So if you haven't played it yet, shame on you. Go play those games. But would you guys recommend, I'll just go real quick here. David, I'll start with David. Oh, David has stepped away. I apologize. Wooly, I'll start with you and go in reverse order here. Wooly, would you recommend chronological order or no? Play it in the traditional sense, 1, then 2, because feelings towards characters may be impacted.
To be honest, mate, I don't have a major stake in this argument because I wasn't outraged. I hated Abby, but initially, but that was the point.
Right.
The whole point was that I hated him initially. And then I started to feel disdain towards Ellie for the way she was handling things. And it's like now you've got the emotional wet lettuces on Twitter saying this game makes you hate Ellie. It's a joke. It's stupid. Neil Druckmann's this, that, and the other, and there's hyper emotional about it. But I'm like, no, I'm in it for the ride. I'm in it for the different emotions and feelings, and then I'm in it for the reflection at the end of it. And at the end of it, I was begging Ellie to let go of Abby, and I was begging her. I was so uncomfortable. I was like, I don't want this. I don't want any of this. I want you both to, just go. I want you both to be friends, like. And it's like,
but here's my question though, Wooly. Listen, what you're saying is you're kind of answering the question, but you're getting more into the basis of the story. Would you have had those feelings the way that the roller coaster went if you did it in chronological order? I don't think so.
No, that's the thing. I wouldn't, because if it's in chronological order, then you would have had no that Joel and Ellie made peace, and you would have had knowledge already that Joel and Ellie made peace.
Yeah, no,
I went through the whole game. I went through the whole game mourning, thinking the last thing Joel thought was Ellie hates him. But that's not the case. And so it's like, and we find that out at the end, and that gives you a level of peace and closure at the end of the game. And it was powerful. I got it. Not a lot of people got it. And but whether that's Neil's fault for being overly indulgent, or whether it's just because people didn't actually play the game, I don't know. But what I do know is that I loved the game, warts and all. I loved how uncomfortable the story made me feel. Mm-hmm. Yeah, was I morbidly depressed by the end of it? Absolutely. But it was an experience, bro. It was an experience. So I think this is a great additional content. I'm not going to turn my nose up against free content, and have hats off to the devs for doing it. It's probably for those who enjoyed the series and thought, oh, you know what, I might play the games now. No, but because they did things more chronologically.
I think it's speaking more to someone like myself, maybe you, who have now played through. I've played through the second one twice. I've played through the first one probably 4 or 5 times. Now I'm interested to see it and how they piece it together, how they are going to, the people that created this piece it together. Again, watching, someone look it up for me real quick if you don't mind, or I'll look it up in a second. I don't remember the name of it, but the way that The Godfather, again, 1 and 2 were done in chronological order was very interesting. They added a little bit to the movie. I think they added some scenes that were originally cut, which even added more context to what Vito and what happened in Sicily and the way things went down and how his father was involved with things. It got a little bit more in depth with that, but that put more context on when Vito got to New York and what happened and how he got involved with the mafia and this and that and how the Corleones came into power and how Michael moved to Nevada and the whole thing. Like they added and they kept adding and they put it in chronological order and it just fits so beautifully. But again, I'll say the same thing. I would recommend you watch 1 and 2 alone, then watch chronological order. So Nib, what do you think? Willie made some really good points. I think the new mode is for people that have already experienced it, because I don't think you would get the emotions that were originally written by Neil and the team if you played it through in chronological order. What do you think?
Yeah, 100% don't play it in chronological order to begin with. It is spliced up for a reason. Everything is meticulous about it.
That's right.
It's designed to elicit different emotions and context at different times. For surprise, for anger, for emotion. to test your tribalism, to test, whether you can be empathetic towards another viewpoint. Like if you don't get me wrong, I'm sure like chronologically it will be a great experience as well, just a different type of experience. But it's like, I don't know, like Pulp Fiction. Like Pulp Fiction wouldn't be the same film if it wasn't spliced up the way it is.
That's right.
Like that's the whole point. Is it's done that way for not just for entertainment, but to draw more from the narrative in different perspectives. So yeah, absolutely play it regularly first. And then if you're going to do a second playthrough, do it in chronological order. And I have to admit, like, I was one of those, like, I made a joke about it. They are milking this.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I'm like, we should actually kind of be grateful, because if another game did this, we would be like, oh, it's amazing post-launch support because it's free at the end of the day, right?
Right.
Like, they charge for it, like, fine, complain. But if it's kind of like a live service thing, like you're just getting it free.
The thing is, so that's why I posed the question the way I did in the topics, Nib, and it's on the scrolling topic line on the bottom there. I completely agree with you. You're not going to hear me complain about the free content, and I think for all of us, or many of us that have already played them, this is a neat way. If you said I want to go back and experience it in this fashion, great. Nib, my question to you and the panel was, the second part of it anyways, was, is this stalling?
Yeah, so I think what it is because I've had this discussion in the past with other people. So development teams, so usually when you come to crunch time, or you come to the release of a certain title, they expand their numbers, right? And then once the project drops, they basically get rid of a bunch of contractors. And they thin their numbers out again, and the whole process starts again, and gradually they start increasing numbers again. Now, oftentimes, like, the thing with that is you end up having more turnover, and you have to do a lot of the training process again. You have to do a lot of the sourcing again, and all the, finding the right talent and the right fit and everything like that, right? And it's not always conducive to the development process and to retaining, like, the good talent. And you can't afford to keep everyone, because obviously projects, it's not like that. Projects have the intensity towards the end, not throughout the entire process. So I think these kind of things, like remasters and these little updates or whatever, they are essentially ways to keep pockets of the development studio engaged or on something, as opposed to having to cut. And obviously this adds value to people who are watching the HBO show and who are still buying the game, or considering buying the game, or considering buying the remaster or remake or whatever. So there is still financial incentive, even if it is free. It's essentially just like, oh, you haven't bought it yet? Well, there's this as well now. There's more of a reason for you to check it out. And then obviously the remake, like, you didn't catch it on PS3, you didn't catch it on PS4. Well, here's a brand new state-of-the-art version of it. So I think these teams, like, they do these things to kind of stay in the loop and essentially not have to be cut. So I don't think these kind of things necessarily take away from other projects. I think by and large they probably wouldn't be doing much on the other project to begin with, or like in terms of the organizational side of things, they're already fully maxed out on the other project. So yeah, I doubt we're losing much. But me personally, like, I am very curious to play it in chronological order, because it's always been a question mark. We've always had people like, oh, it would have been better this way or that way. And while I don't think I will ever agree with that, I am curious to see how it would play and what emotions and stuff, what the journey would be in the regular order, because it would be fascinating to see why he made the decisions he made in terms of editing and splicing up, because we'll literally have a direct comparison. So yeah, it's cool. And as much as I joke about it being milked or whatever, like, I'm not going to complain about an awesome free update to one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah, no, and that's a great point. And so shout out to a few people. Desinger, I see you in the chat going back and forth. He goes, I know I'm exaggerating. Listen, that's the question, Desinger, right? And you could throw the jab in there. You could throw a joke. Nib just mentioned it too. Like, the whole thing I'm saying is like, yes, we can't use the word milking it, because they're not charging for this. And clearly to go in there. I don't believe they're adding any scenes. Did they mention if they were adding any new scenes? I didn't see that in the write-up. So it's really just editing, right, Nib? I mean, there's more to it than that, of course. But I'm saying they're not putting any new scenes. I know they're giving some new clothing to, if you beat the chronological order, you'll get basically an Uncharted collection. You'll get a Nathan Drake and what's his brother's name? Nathan's brother. Anyways, you'll get their outfits for Joel in the game. So that's very, very cool. But at the same time, it's kind of like, I just feel like I think every time Naughty Dog puts out a statement and it's a The Last of Us update, you're not doing more harm, but you're certainly not making gains. I don't know. Is that? And I love them. You guys know that. Death Singer, what do you think? Are they? To me, it's Sam. Thank you. It's Sam. Thank you.
I don't know. I have no opinion. Like it's cool. It's a free update, sure. I mean, you couldn't possibly re-release it again, right? Because you've already had 3 different versions of the first one. Mm-hmm. You have 2 different versions of the second one. Then you have a complete collection which contains both games.
Yep.
So unless when the Intergalactic releases, you're gonna have the digital deluxe Naughty Dog Bounty collection, which includes Intergalactic, The Last of Us Part 2, The Last of Us 1, and fuck it, throw in the Uncharted series. I mean, I don't know at this point. I have no opinion on it. Cool update, sure. Chronological order, no idea what it means. But hey, if you're a fan of the series, enjoy.
That's what a great sales pitch. I don't know how many people would have bought it after that, but no, listen, I can't blame you. I'm a big fan. Mary Wilcox is saying, I can't wait for Intergalactic. Listen, I'm gonna no life Intergalactic. I don't know. I don't want to say if it launches next to something else that's that big for me, but I will definitely be playing that no life. I would like to sit here and tell you guys I would stream that for you guys, but I would probably only stream Intergalactic on my second playthrough to maybe clean up some trophies to get the platinum, because I would want to enjoy the hell out of that. That may even be, it's been a long time, but that's probably a couple days off from work to enjoy that bad boy. But that's something I'm really looking forward to. But I do understand what Death Singer saying. David, I know that you said you had to go shortly as well. We're actually going to do outros in a moment here. But David, what did you think when you saw the chronological order? Real quick question for you, hot round here on Crossfire. We're going to say, would you say to everybody your advice, and for yourself, if you haven't, would you play 1 and 2 separately so you can have the roller coaster of emotions, or would you play chronological order and see them in not necessarily the way the devs originally intended you to see this?
I've always been a big believer in play them as they were released for get the devs' vision on it, but it's an interesting perspective.
It is.
I will just say, you heard it here first, folks. It's absolutely, definitely not going to be released on Xbox. That's for sure. Death Singer with the scoop there. They're not going to re-release this game.
With the late breaking news from Death Singer. Fantastic.
Ooh. I mean, to be fair, they can't re-release it again. They re-release it again. Someone has to take them outside and go, what the fuck are you doing? Because I mean, I appreciate playing. I play some games through like 5 times.
Yes,
like the Trails of Cold Stew Trails series. I played 5 times, but I didn't buy it 5 times.
Yeah.
So
no, go ahead, David.
It is, as I mentioned earlier, they're flogging out these things to try and generate some revenue to hold them over, because they've had so many half starts and restarts and all the rest of it, and they haven't, like, Naughty Dog's way behind on where they need to be. They got to generate revenue somehow, so fair shout for them having a crack, and people will buy it and people will consume it. As you said, there's heaps of people that love that game. They love the story of it. They love The Last of Us world and how it's built, and they will consume it, and you could, they could re-release it with a black and white mode and people will devour it.
It's funny though, you should mention, David, real quick, that I was talking to some friends of mine, and they said they don't game or anything like that. They said, hey, you ever hear, because everyone was kind of doing water cooler talk, right, at work, and they're like, everyone's talking about different shows that are coming out, like, for example, The Bears season 4 is out right now, I think, on Hulu, for those of you that were watching it. There's other things that are coming out. This, The Boys or Vought or whatever it is, Vought University or whatever that's going to be coming. And somebody says, "Hey, anybody ever hear of there's a show on HBO? It's called The Last of Us." And I'm like, yeah, I've heard of it. And so we were going through it, and they said, "No shit, that's a game." And I'm like, "Yeah, you should. I would recommend playing the game and watch the HBO thing at another time. To be honest with you." And they're like, it's interesting. I'll think about that. And it was just funny because that's the kind of conversation that happens, happened probably with Fallout as well on Prime. This is great. I love this. Did you ever hear the games? No. Oh, you got to try Fallout. Oh, blah, blah, blah. It happens. So it's funny, though, David, when you said people play these games over and over again. Not only do people play the games over and over again, but the amount of sales probably generated in the games and everything else from what HBO and the deal with that they cut there has done is probably enormous. I mean, there was even a spike in Fallout sales after it aired on Prime. So, yeah, I think that's an interesting statistic. I know all of us in the gaming community kind of joke about it, and that's fine. I think it's worthy because we played Last of Us for a lot longer than it's been out on HBO. But I mean, these are things that all kind of marry into each other. And there's also hardcore gaming fans that like The Last of Us, and they're like, "Wow, I played The Last of Us 1 4 times. I played The Last of Us 2 4 times. Now I'm going to play it in chronological order." See how they kind of put it together. So I do think it's interesting.
If they want to keep mucking around with it, they can, and we're getting it for free. Well, fucking who cares?
Absolutely, not complaining at all. But I do think. If somebody asked me how would since you've played them both a bunch of times, I would agree with the entire panel that I would play them in not chronological order. So again, not complaining at all, but yes, go ahead, Dessinger.
What they should do is appease their fan base, and instead of re-releasing The Last of Us and The Last of Us 2, you put that time and re-release Factions. Since you failed on Factions,
you know what, Dessinger? That's the first thing you've said in so long since the dawn of this podcast that I actually agree with.
The dawn, he said.
The thing is, it's like, I know Jack. Shout out to Jack. He is a massive The Last of Us Factions player. Like, he absolutely adores it. He's been singing for it. A lot of people I know in the Discord and whatnot who like The Last of Us, they're like, well, instead of re-releasing these games again and again, just put that time and effort into releasing a remastered version or remake version of just Factions from the first game. Release it, and I guarantee you people will be like, "Yo, this is fantastic." They'll make money off it.
Yeah,
it'll be a great addition. But instead, they're giving you the complete collection. So
that's an interesting take. Throw a couple. I'm right there with you, Deathsinger. But and not just remastering or remaking the Factions, but throw a couple new maps in there too. Wouldn't be that. It's funny the things that people would actually be thriving for. And shout out to Jack as well. And shout out to BG. I know that they played the hell. I liked it a lot. They loved it. So I was looking forward to Factions 2 or whatever they're going to call. And I didn't even care if it was going to be a big open world bonanza or if it was just going to be more Factions 1. I would have taken that. I think we all would have taken that. And I wonder if they hear the community, and when there is down the road, probably PS6, when The Last of Us 3 comes out or something like that, if they just tack on a multiplayer, you know what I mean? For old time's sake, you know what I mean? I'd be amazed how many people would applaud that. I will say this, though, guys. We have hit over the 3-hour mark. I even told Wooly, I was like, Wooly, I'm going to try and keep this one to 2 hours or 2.5 hours because I legitimately have the longest day tomorrow and I had a long day today. But you guys were all fantastic. I want to say thanks to the great chat that's out there. I want to say thanks for all the super chats. If you're still listening, shout out to Ghost and Babor, Garuda, Jay Hart, Highlander. I see all you guys out there. Domino Zero, Full Sweat, Glassdoor, Andy Hart, Lord Metroid, Mega Cloud. You guys are all fantastic. Glinter, Archwar Angel. Just fantastic people. I appreciate the super chats. You guys make the night thrive and keep moving with the questions, and it gets the panel riveting and anxious to answer more and more of your questions. So I appreciate all that. You guys are awesome. 3-hour mark for sure, Mary. Guys, I'll go in reverse order here because I know, David, you also have a timeline, and it's mid-afternoon, and I know you're actually working at times. David, let people know where they can find you. And Dave, thank you so much for tonight, by the way, because you gave some great insight. A lot of us, we read these articles, and again, they are journalists just kind of finding information and passing it along. But it's nice to have somebody to be able to take a deep dive and do, like you say, not a tech talk, but maybe an accountant talk. And we all could use one of those sometimes when it comes down to the financials in the gaming industry. David, let people know where they can find you, and thanks for being here tonight.
You're very welcome, and thank you for bringing me along. You can find me at Forky87 on Twitter. You can find me poking around on a few podcasts, and in about 2 minutes, you'll find me in my next meeting.
Well, hopefully it's as much fun as the podcast, David.
Yeah, well, I don't know about that. We're doing a year-end close, and it looks like things are starting to take a sharp turn to the left. So I'm going to have to love you and leave you, unfortunately. But thank you for having me, and I appreciate those kind words. And everyone keep safe and enjoy.
Thank you, David. Appreciate it, man. Always great. Great David Faulkner, everybody. Thank you, David. Appreciate that. Wooly, let everybody know where they can find you. And I feel bad. All these guys, these guys got some guys in England. I got David, who's over in Australia. It's tomorrow for them. And the great Wooly Gamer also has to go to work soon. Wooly, thanks for doing a podcast and, 3-hour one at that. And then going to work. Tell the family we said hello as well. But Wooly, let people know where they can find you. Thanks for being here all night with us.
Thank you, brother. I've loved it. And you can find me at Wooly Gamer YT for YouTube, on Twitter, and it's been a pleasure hashing it all out with you guys. And it's been really nice, especially being on with Folky, because that's Folky was a panel member on my podcast.
That's right.
Originally, and so we go way back, and it's just really nice being back on with him. So and it's been nice ripping Death Singer a new one as well. It's been lovely.
You guys are fantastic together. I'm waiting for the Death Singer and Wooly podcast. I'll be there with popcorn every single day. You guys are fantastic. Wooly, thanks for being here, buddy. The great Death Singer, since we're going to go right over to him. Death Singer, listen, the audience missed you. I missed you last week. But listen, sometimes, like I said, life gets in the way, but great to have you back. You and Wooly are fantastic together. You guys are oil and water, but it makes for a great podcast. I would support you two teaming up any day of the week, just not Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern. But Death Singer, let people know where they can find you, buddy, and I appreciate you being here tonight.
I love being here. It's always a fun time.
Thank you.
Especially with the breaking news that Death Stranding 2 is no longer in the 90 club. Which is crazy time to be alive. It's next Saturday in 89. I don't know. But you can find me everywhere. Doing what I do, playing my interesting take on games, and enjoy your no longer 90 rated game, I guess.
Oh, that's great. You're becoming the Grim Reaper for some reason in certain topics, but I love it. I do like the late breaking news. It's awesome. It's great to have Death Singer here with us. So you guys know that before you have your last drink of bourbon tonight, that it's sitting at an 89. Hopefully somebody else will rank it higher and get it back to a 90.
Death Singer, remind me, what's one of your favorite games of all time? Stellaris' Metacritic.
I have no idea. I ain't looked at that shit in ages.
You know what? Just doing a quick Google. One sec. It's
one of my favorite
78. Games. It's 78, my guy. So sit down, take a seat.
One of my favorite games this year is a 90 rated Baldur's Gate 3. What did that get? Oh, 96.
That was last year. But yes.
2 years ago.
Yeah.
That's still one of my favorite recent games, A 96 is a respectable score, You got to give it its flowers.
Favorite game this
year? Is 78 a respectable score for Stellaris, my guy?
Well, yeah, of course, because Metacritic's fucking stupid, but it's still funny.
Well, there you go then. You stop using Metacritic then, you absolute donut.
I can use Metacritic because everyone else does. I don't care about it. And bear in mind, my favorite game this year is Expedition 33, which is also a 90 rated game. So that's 2 years in a row with 2 90 plus rated games.
No.
What can I do?
2023. What about 2024?
What even came out in 2024?
Nib is doing the I'm going to make this podcast go till 45 minutes after Mooch finished.
Stellar Blade did, and he loved Stellar Blade.
Xenoblade is 81, I think.
That's in the 80s. That's in the 80s.
That's a whole 8 points lower. A whole 8 points lower than Death Stranding 2. Oh, gee. It must be absolute trash, right?
An 80 and 70 are still playable games. It's just, fanboys think that 70 and 80s are unplayable, and by their logic now, Death Stranding 2 is unplayable because it's no longer
By whose logic, bro? By whose logic? Who says that?
Shout out to the PlayStation fanboys.
No, because no PlayStation fanboy calls 89 a trash at all. They no PlayStation fanboy who I've come across on Twitter in the publicly well-known space, unless they're a sock account with like one follower, right? Says 89's trash. So you just, what is this? Create narratives, make shit update, and like run with it for entertainment purposes. Because if that's the case, then fine, do it. Just add that as a disclaimer beforehand, my guy.
No, it's also because these narratives have been existing since the start of the Xbox
These
One
narratives have been existing since PCMRists want validation for their thousands of pounds spent on hardware.
They've been existing since last generation.
You're creating these narratives, F. Singer.
No. These narratives. This is how you know people who were around.
Enjoy your 78 Stellaris, bro. You're one of your favorite games ever made.
Willie, I appreciate you're new to the community. I appreciate it because you weren't obviously on the streets.
Do you know how long I've been? Do you know how long I've been in the Twitter space for, and on the YouTube scene, and on the podcast scene?
JC23 goes, Mooch, just shut it down. I just made a mental note.
I've been here for 6 years, my guy.
I just made a mental note to whenever I have Wooly on and Death Singer to start doing outros at an hour and a half into the show. That way we can get to a 3-hour segment. It's okay, guys.
If you've only been here for 6 years, you missed most of last gen. So these narratives you wouldn't know. So it's fine.
Mary goes, you
better
end this.
Those narratives haven't existed for the last 6 years. So, what are we doing here? Have you got Alzheimer's? Are you like set 2 generations in the past? Well, of course you are. All you play is old games on PC, but nevertheless, I mean, come on. Like, if we haven't heard these narratives going around in the last 6 years, then they're not relevant.
These narratives going around. Yes, we have.
Only from you. You're the only one who comes up with that narrative.
I see it all the time on Twitter. What do you mean?
SOT says this is good content.
89 is trash.
89 has not been said. It's trash. If it has, that's wild. You got to Death Singer behind the scenes DM me. Let me know. I don't think that's been around. But
I'm just pulling you up on your bullshit, bro. I'm pulling you up on your bullshit. You are creating narratives that do not exist.
He may be bringing stuff up that came up, like he said, last generation when the console wars were at its peak. But nonetheless, those are console warring, and it's always good in good health and good fun. That being said, Nib, let people know where they can find you, and try not to go into a whole new narrative, Nib. We are approaching for you guys right around 3 a.m.
I was just going to say, it is funny, though, because this is actually happened to a lot of PlayStation exclusives. So Rift Apart, Horizon Forbidden West, Death Stranding 2, and I think, was it the original Spider-Man? They're always like one away from 90.
Yep.
It's usually late reviews that score them poorly that do it. So this time it was Survivor and, Edge.
Yeah. I think Survivor gave him a 7.
7, yeah. Which it is really funny. It's something that maybe there could be some analysis into, because I do find that trend quite interesting. But X NIB95_.
You guys are great. You can find me. Love everybody here. Love the panel. Love the chat. Guys, hit the like button on the way out. Mine doesn't refresh live with the like, so I don't know where we are right now. But wherever it is, there's still 196 people here. If all 196 went and hit the like button right now, I guarantee you it would jump up unbelievably. That being said, guys, we'll be back next Thursday, 7 p.m. Eastern. I'm not sure if it'll be Saturday or Sunday, but we are going to be here doing some Twitch streaming. It's going to be fun. I don't know if I'm going to do Death Stranding. Death Stranding 2, I've just been continuing to go. I'm trucking along. I'm enjoying the game. I can do that if you guys want. I can do a poll, or we'll do some Warzone, or we'll do something where we're just chatting it up a little bit, getting ready for what's coming up down the pipe as we go into August, and then we go into September. Of course, Borderlands 4, we're going to be a lot of streaming with that. That being said, guys, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. We'll see you next Thursday. Peace out. Good night. Go play some games and enjoy yourself. Peace.
Layers, gents.
Yeah, good night, guys.